Leave it to the Knicks on a nice late September Friday evening when the wife and I are like, you know what? Let's do something nuts. Let's hire a sitter just to go see a movie in the movie theater. And there I am. I won't spoil it, so I can't say anything about the film because my God. Seeing The Substance, strongly recommend with Demi Moore.
Oh God.
It's very, very
Oh, is
good.
my mic on? I'm sorry. You were seeing The Substance and then something crazy happened.
Yes, and then something crazy happened.
God.
And I'll tell you later off air what part it was when I got the news because it was a lot of parts of that movie. And we get the alert, and here we are. I was attempting and failing to pay attention to the film while tweets were coming in. So I have not really taken the time to attempt to wrap my mind around this, but I know you, Jeremy Cohen, have probably processed it a little bit more. So I'm going to throw it to you first. And then and tweets are still coming in, we should say, as you are speaking, I will attempt to formulate some thoughts and pick it up where you leave off. How about that?
Sure. It's kind of you to think that I've gotten that far because I hopped on this pod and I quite literally said to Andrew, just looked at my phone with a barrage of texts and the first name that popped up happened to be his. And the first thing I said to Andrew after that was, what was the trade?
I broke the news to Jeremy when he showed up to stream.
To be clear, I saw the push notification. It didn't process until Andrew saw it.
It's not real until Andrew. Andrew's the new Woj, actually.
He is. Have you ever seen
Andrew? Someone's got to
Woj
do it.
in the same room? I haven't. Here's my thought process.
Yeah.
There's a whole season to figure out exactly the direction the Knicks are going. Because on the surface, right, it could be very easy to say the Knicks are a 5-out team. That's what they care about. They got Karl-Anthony Towns under contract long-term. This is a guy that Leon Rose has long coveted, all that. And I think that's incredibly valid. What I'm still so curious about is how much, I mean, I'm sure Mitchell Robinson played a part in this. How could he not? The injury protection, you got a big man there.
We're going to get to Mitch.
But when you look at Tibbs and his familiarity with Cat, and you look at the Knicks and their scouting and how their offense goes, and how the New York Knicks, when it comes to usage rate, as we've talked about many a times, John, last in the NBA in terms of how they do that. And the question
for centers,
thank you. The question that I keep going back to as I try to process all this is, because they have Karl-Anthony Towns, which insane to say, is Karl-Anthony Towns their shifting of a philosophy at the 5, or do they truly see him as a 4 who can play stretch 5 in minutes to cover where they need? And then at some point during this season, they make something else. Because I went on Cats and Shoot this past week, and Fred and I talked, and we came as close as possible to saying Knicks probably need to make a trade here. Like, it's not desperate, but is this team that goes so hard for 82 games, where the margin of error between the 2nd seed and the 8th seed was only 4 games, this team is going to be comfortable with their center situation? Didn't buy it. Didn't think it would be in the vein of Karl-Anthony Towns.
Well, I have so much I want to say. I think there's a lot of questions right now. Somewhere in the top 10 amongst those questions is how much the Mitchell Robinson, as I'm saying, I can't even get the question out because I was about to say the Mitchell Robinson news. But as we just talked about a few days ago, it wasn't news to the Knicks. And as Ian Begley and others have confirmed in the days since the news came out to us, they've known about this for a while. So to think that they just found something out and then that pushed them to do this is silly. Another thing that we should factor in that specific point, I know we're jumping around here. I'm going to get to my big picture thoughts in a second. I forget who tweeted it. I'm going to be referencing a lot of tweets that I saw come in over the last, half hour, 45 minutes and not attributing them properly. I apologize. But one of the Knicks beat reporters indicated that the Knicks have been not scouring the league for Julius Randle trades, but have been exploring Julius Randle trades for a while this summer. So with that said, let me try to make this make sense. Knowing we don't know the final version of the deal because there's still a $9 million gap. So we know the Charlotte Hornets are going to be the other team involved. Don't know who's going there. Don't know how that's going to make the money work, but there's more to come here. And by the way, it's not going to be Precious Achiuwa because Precious Achiuwa can't be traded until January 15th. So something tells me Mitchell Robinson may be on his way out. That is an assumption, not a fact. I haven't gotten a chance to work my way through it yet. Anyway, I digress.
So
sorry, but
yeah, no, the absolute main thing here, right, is the Knicks are always about talent acquisition.
Yes.
And they did not let the Villanova Brotherhood get in the way. And that was something to keep in mind. The amount of minutes, and this was something that I was going to talk about once we got back into it, but the sheer amount of minutes to go around with the glut of guards never truly made sense to me. And my whole thinking was, well, they're not going to move DiVincenzo.
Nobody thought they would.
Right. So, Deuce will see time, but it's Deuce the one who's on the outside looking in terms of rotation minutes. And they switched it up with terms of from a positional standpoint. But the crux of this to me has to be Julius Randle.
It's all about Julius Randle.
It has to be, right? And the thing is, this was the thing about the Julius Randle trade that we harped on for years, which was if you're going to trade Julius Randle, upgrade. Do not trade for neutral value. Do not trade for, quantity. Go up, get quality. And the thing is, I sit here saying if I had to make my pick of players and going around the league and who I want and all that, it wouldn't be Karl-Anthony Towns. But I also recognize the things that Julius Randle doesn't do have an impact. What shocks me most of all is that the Knicks are a huge corner three team. They love that shot.
I love you get on here and you're talking about the Knicks made the most seismic trade in the history of the franchise, and you're on here talking about corner 100%. Threes.
Exactly, because it's all part of what their philosophy is, their identity, everything.
I know.
And when you look at last year, and DJ's so great about this stat, I loved it. You get corner threes from Julius Randle. He was third in the NBA amongst players 1,500 minutes or more in corner three assists. And my whole philosophy was, why would you add someone in Karl-Anthony Towns, knowing full well the shooting, right? The 5-out ability, all of that stuff. I get the pros for why. But taking that, what Julius has to offer, and swapping it for the other good things that Karl-Anthony Towns has before training camp, with Julius Randle just getting a court named after him a few days ago.
This is
shocking.
about a lot. It's about a lot more in corner threes. When the Knicks made the trade, I was gonna say the McCall trade, but really, when they made the OG trade, they were going for it. Mm-hmm. They announced to the world, this is it. We believe we have the core here. And when I say core, I mean Jalen Brunson, to win a championship. We have the best guy. So now let's start to cash in our chips. And they cashed in first their best young player and their best movable salary for the sort of piece that every championship team needs in OG Anunoby. And I would argue that there's no one better than that sort of piece for what he is. Then they cashed in the draft picks for a guy who we've paid a lot of attention to the Nova connection. Obviously, I think that matters, chemistry and all that stuff. But it's more like, hey, we may have gotten the best version of that guy in the league half a year ago. Now let's maybe get the second best version who does some of the stuff that the guy we just got 6 months ago maybe doesn't do as well. And theoretically have the best wing tandem in the league when it comes to all the things that you need wings to do to win games in the NBA. And this was the final piece. And it rarely in the NBA, these days at least, do you get a team making a final move that is not without controversy. And this is going to be easily Doesn't matter what he does for the rest of his tenure, however long it lasts, he could have the job for another 30 years. I would go so far as to say Leon Rose will never make another move as controversial as the one that he made tonight in trading Julius Randle for Karl-Anthony Towns. So for me, you're thinking about corner threes. I'm also in the minority because when I saw the trade, the thing that stunned me the most had nothing to do with Karl-Anthony Towns and Julius Randle. Had everything to do with Dante DiVincenzo. And I know people are going to call me all sorts of names for saying what I'm about to say when I did not display any of this when RJ Barrett and Emmanuel Quickley got traded. A little part of me died inside knowing that Dante DiVincenzo was not going to be on this team anymore because I developed more of an attachment to Dante DiVincenzo as one of the core members of this team from last year than I have for I'm not going to name names, but than I have for just about any player that's played here over the course of the previous 20 some odd years. So, and I get it. The NBA is a business. You have to do what you have to do. It's show business, not show friends. And in this instance, they needed the money, I would assume, to make it work because the Timberwolves, I'm guessing, were basically saying, we're not doing this deal without Dante DiVincenzo. And Jeremy, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't know that there was a functional way to do this deal because even if we just let's take a quick side something to talk about the cap real quick. Sidebar, thank you. I can't think clearly right now.
Former lawyer. What's the
Karl-Anthony? Yeah, sidebar. Karl-Anthony Towns is $49 million. Julius Randle is $28.9 million. So right off the bat, that is $20+ million to make up. Throw in Mitch, that gets you another 14. Even if you throw in Deuce, that gets you up to 19. I guess you could have done Julius, Mitch, Deuce, and a minimum, which I would guess. My guess is that the Knicks pitched that first, and the Wolves were like, "We're not doing that. We need Dante in the deal," which good for them. And that makes me ask a few questions. One, well, really, it is only one question. What is going through the Knicks' mind as the primary driver why they needed to make this trade at this time? Because to shake things up to the extent where you're going to trade two of your core pieces, again, the Randle part doesn't surprise me at all. We've talked about Randle trades for a while, and we're going to get into the Randle aspect of it in a bit. But to send out Dante as well, and because or there was a small part of me that wonders if this was about keeping Mitch, but then they can't be about keeping Mitch because they're going to have to send out Mitch at some point for salary purposes. I have to assume to get this deal done because I don't know how else the hell they get it done. I'm all over the place here. I wanted to get that out first, and then we can get into the Randle of it all.
Before we get into the Randle, can we just take a moment to realize that the Knicks just signed and traded DeQuan Jeffries? Like that's how it happened. Yes, he is. So this is the second blockbuster trade the Knicks have used a player completely out of the rotation as a sign and trade to help math work.
But we still don't know the final version.
Sure. Yeah. No, totally get it. But like, and I'll get to work on it because multitasking. But once again, the creativity to take players, and this is, part of a reason why I believe the Knicks only had they had 20 players on the roster, right? They could have one more, and they didn't.
Yes.
They signed and traded DeQuan Jeffries as part of it to get to their max of 21. And shout out, by the way, to Mensa, who said in our group chat that he felt a trade was brewing. And I felt like, don't think it's really relevant. And he was right. So congrats, Mensa. Great call. Because when you look at Shamet, who is not a rotation player, makes a little bit more sense. When we look at Morris, perhaps makes a little bit more sense. They still have to, potentially pare down the roster. But
go back further. Hold on. Go back further. Mm-hmm. Go back to Payne. Go back to the signing of Cameron Payne and all of the times that we have heard ad nauseum, the Knicks do not see Deuce McBride as a backup point guard. The Knicks see Deuce McBride as a small wing. Well, guess what? You've just opened up a lot of minutes for Deuce McBride to play the wing position on your team, and for either Tyler Kolek or Cameron Payne, one of those two guys, to now win the starting point guard job, because all of a sudden that position gets a lot more important after this trade.
Yes.
Daquan Jeffries is expected to get a new contract to make the math work as part of the Karl-Anthony Towns deal per SNY sources. That's still not enough to do it. What I'm looking up right now is if the Charlotte Hornets have a trade exception that I have forgotten about. And maybe and whether they could fit someone in. Okay. Let's get to the actual crux of it, because we've talked a lot about this trade and we haven't actually talked about the trade. What were you going to say before I get to the next?
But I do think the money is important, because in order for us, we have to make the money work in order to go with everything else. And it's like the craziest part here is before, when it had DiVincenzo, like before it was, okay, well, they're not going to train any of the Nova guys. And then they do. Now anything goes. So when you look at the salary as well, and it kind of chips away a little bit. If you were to have these two pieces out with Julius Randle Donte DiVincenzo, Karl-Anthony Towns coming in, as Fanspo would point out, that's $8.8 million being added in. For those at home, the Knicks can't take on more money than they send out. And this is why there's a third team needed, because the Wolves are also in that precarious position. So the Wolves and the Knicks are going to need to shed salary. The Wolves have done that by moving Karl-Anthony Towns.
The Wolves don't need to send out any more money, to be clear. The Knicks are the team that needs to send out more money. Daquan Jeffries can make some of the math work. Can you sign and trade someone to the can you use the taxpayer mid-level exception to do a sign and trade?
Not the taxpayer. You can use the non-taxpayer mid-level exception. But also, how much money is Daquan Jeffries making? Like, that's the question. And then where do we come in with the base year compensation? Here, I think it's really two things, right? The way I see it, and it depends on exactly how much with Daquan Jeffries. But it seems to be, it would either be Mitch going out, right?
And the fact that hasn't been reported yet.
Right. I don't think it is, to be clear. I don't.
And I'm not sure how else they make. And Deuce, it has been reported that Deuce McBride is not being included in this trade.
So if Deuce isn't included in the trade, then you have to consider the Mitch aspect. But then you have to wonder, okay, if Mitch is going out, do the Knicks get someone back from Charlotte? Like, are they getting a Mark Williams type in that scenario?
They have to get someone
who is just injured.
I'm sorry.
There's more to it.
This keeps coming back to Mitch for me, because Charlotte has no exception. They have no functional way to take back this much salary without sending something else back. The amount of salary is going to need to make up the difference in this trade. There's more to this, which is why I am a little leery about talking about too much about what this trade means for this team without knowing if Mitchell Robinson is going to be here or not. I'm going to attempt to do it, putting that issue aside for a moment. Okay, let's talk about Towns and Randle. Over the summer, I wrote not one, not two, but I think I touched on it in a third newsletter, the prospect of the Knicks trading for Karl-Anthony Towns using Julius Randle. And I explained as rationally as possible why every time I scoured the league and I thought about possible Julius Randle trades, I always came back to Cat. And I had some people that were really pissed off at that. And they're like, why the fuck are you spending all this time talking about a trade for Karl-Anthony Towns? And my gut feeling told me then, and I tried to say it as nicely as possible, if you look at where both of these teams are, the Knicks and the Timberwolves, there is no trade in the league, arguably, that makes as much sense for both teams to do as something built around Mitchell Robinson, or excuse me, Julius Randle and Karl-Anthony Towns. And here's why. The Knicks are right there for having a championship roster. We'll talk about the post-Cat roster, but before the Cat. Now, I know there's a lot of people out there who think the Knicks could have won a championship with the roster as currently constituted. They may have been able to. I think the fact that they made this trade leaves the impression on me that they had some significant doubt as to whether or not they had a championship caliber roster as was. I think they saw themselves as being one component away, one piece away, somewhere, somehow, that they needed to rejigger it, because the notion that they would have made this trade purely because of an unpleasant contract situation with Julius Randle does not pass the smell test to me. Does it pass the smell test to you?
It kind of does, to be honest. Like I'm with you, right?
And so you're putting the basketball aside.
I'm saying it's both. I'm saying it's both.
So you're saying the contract situation pushed it from we'll think about it to let's pull the trigger?
Yes.
Okay,
Consider
that's
this.
fair. That's fair.
So
that's fair.
The deadline not the deadline. The first time that Julius can have an extension comes and goes. Nothing. This is a player who two-time All-NBA, coming off of injuries. If there were a window to get a lot of money as he enters his 30s, like presumably now, doesn't want to do it. Okay, fine. He can wait. What are the options available to Julius? Well, he could sign an extension before the season starts, but then once the season starts, it's no longer an extension. Like he's not eligible. He could figure out a way to opt in, I believe, but he can't extend off of that until June. The Knicks.
Let's just say very, very plainly, he could have before the season opted into his player option for 25-26 and extended off of that number.
Correct.
Once the season started, his only option was to extend off of this season's salary, which would have likely meant a much higher salary next season, 25-26, which would have put the Knicks into the second apron, which is clearly something they didn't want to avoid. And I think, I'm sorry, I'm throwing it back to you in a second. I think one of the conclusions we could draw is that Julius Randle had absolutely no interest in opting into his 25-26 salary by the fact that this trade happened. Is that a fair and reasonable conclusion?
I think that's fair, even with the 140% extension. But even without,
if they even offered that, which we don't know.
Right. What happened this past offseason? The Knicks, they traded for OG Anunoby prior to that, and they knew it was an uncomfortable conversation. They created the opportunity to at least try to do an opt-in and extend.
The salary conversation with Julius Randle was an uncomfortable conversation because of how much money they just paid OG?
No. I'm saying the Knicks just went through a difficult summer where they paid OG Anunoby a lot of money.
Yes. Okay.
They had originally traded for him, and the option, not that it was necessarily the thing that was going to happen, but the option of, hey, if you needed to opt in and extend off of that, could do it. Didn't happen. He opted out. He got paid. Isaiah Hartenstein, based on the CBA, got a great offer, and the market dynamics swung him away. That is those two situations are not the norm for how the Knicks have operated. The Knicks love team control. They try to reduce the factors where they can. And with Julius Randle, what they were looking at was an opportunity where they have to work out a sign and trade, and the math can get wonky, and you have to go based on the cap hit.
Well,
and he's also someone who's injured, and how many teams want him? How many teams have the flexibility to keep him? There are a lot of questions here. And so what the Knicks did was they said, we're going to get a better player from a shooting and efficiency standpoint as well. That's a huge part of it. In the room, and if we're parting with the Pistons pick, if we're parting with a rotation piece and Dante, who's not even going to be starting, they're comfortable with it. But it wasn't the way that I see it. It's twofold. It absolutely is the basketball portion. How could it not be?
Well, let's get to that now. Can we get to that?
But
now?
But it has to be the contract portion too.
It's
otherwise, if it weren't the contract position, the Knicks probably would have moved Julius sooner. Like they could have moved him the year earlier, but they didn't have to.
Because this is not an organization that acts before it needs to. I think they are confident in their ability to act when the time is right. And by the way, on the DiVincenzo question that I openly asked before, Ian Begley now with a report, DiVincenzo was a sticking point in the trade. Once DiVincenzo became a realistic option, that's essentially when the deal got done. So clearly they would have liked to keep Dante DiVincenzo and send out Mitchell Robinson instead as the outgoing salary. We'll see if Mitch still needs to go out as the outgoing salary. Okay. So everybody, or a lot of people out there, I'm sure, are wondering, well, why do this now? Why make this trade, this seismic of a trade, why don't you just see what Julius Randle looks like with this team, especially when the team looks so good in January? And I'm going to say up front, I don't have a great answer. I have an answer. I don't have a great answer. Here's what I got. Not primarily, one of the main reasons is what you just said. I think they wanted to avoid a contract. I think whatever feel they got, and let's forget this man switched agents briefly before switching back to CAA. Whatever feel they got from Julius's camp did not give them an exorbitant amount of confidence that this was going to become a tenable situation next summer. That's part of it. I also think they had their doubts that if they went through this season and got into the playoffs and faced a team like Boston, and maybe that didn't go well, and maybe Julius was exposed, and I've said this repeatedly over the entire course of the summer. I was worried about Julius against Boston. I was worried about his ability to defend that attack with all of what they are able to throw at you. And I thought they are well equipped to guard him because they are a team that is like, you want to go dribble the air out of the ball against Drew Holiday and Derek White against what you perceive to be a matchup switch, be our guest. And I think they see Boston as the team they're going to need to get through. And I think a significant part of this has to do with the fact that they doubted whether or not Julius Randle would ever be able to be a significant piece, because he would need to be a significant piece on the team that toppled the defending NBA champions. Ultimately, though, I think this is more about a question of use of resources. And we've talked about this on this podcast so many times. Once you lost Isaiah Hartenstein at center, you were left with what? You were left with Mitchell Robinson, who's a wonderful player who we all love. He's a limited player. And he is limited enough that I think reasonable minds can look at him and say, you know what? Even putting the injuries aside, I'm not sure I see that guy playing 25 minutes a night in an NBA Finals when teams know they could absolutely ignore him on the offensive side of the ball, and they could let him operate in the short roll without anyone within 15 fucking feet of him and not have to worry about him executing a dribble move or a hook shot or any of those sorts of things. And on the defensive end, for as much as he's a gifted rim protector and one of the best pick and roll defenders in the league, the notion that he is going to be able to do the amount of switching and other defensive necessities required to guard some of the more elegant attacks, I'll say, in the NBA, I think that's something that was also something that was a question mark. Not saying he can't contribute, not saying they don't need a center like that, and maybe even him, because we haven't gotten the final details of the trade yet. But I think they had their doubts as to whether that was a guy they were going to be able to depend on in a significant way if they wanted to win a championship. Okay, great. So if you need to upgrade the center position in some form of fashion, how are you going to do it? Well, two options. You play with small ball, which they talked a big game, clearly didn't really believe it, or you go out and you make a trade. So who the fuck do you go out and make a trade for? There's no center that made sense for them to just go out and trade for a center that was a traditional 5, or at least no one that was attainable, because I don't think the Lakers are trading Anthony Davis anytime soon. So then it's like, all right, well, what if we keep Mitch and we trade, Julius Randle for a 4 that could maybe play some 5? Well, those guys aren't out there. Even if you wanted to swap Julius Randle out for another big wing and just go all big wings and take your chances with Mitch, where's that player out there? Like, we've scoured the league. There are no trades out there. The only trade that made any remote sense is if you got a guy who offered some significant versatility in terms of positional, like what he could play a little bit of the 4, play a little bit of the 5, and at least gives you the opportunity. Unlike Julius Randle, who feasibly you need to play on offense at the 4. Like, I don't think this really, what this comes down to? This comes down to their doubt that small ball was going to be something that they could go to for most portions of games. Because otherwise, I think they would have felt okay about, okay, Julius gives enough of an advantage if he's the 5 on offense. Clearly, they had doubts about that. So how do you fix that? You go get the most matchup prone, not most matchup prone, but like in terms of the compromising positions he puts a defense into, you get a guy like Karl-Anthony Towns, who is unmatched in some areas and incredibly frustrating in other areas. I'm still wrapping my mind around how it's going to look, how it's going to work. But I'll say this, and we have DJ here. I'm really curious to get his thoughts. If you're going to go out and get two of the best wing defenders in the NBA, and incredibly versatile ones at that, and ones that could really cover up for a lot of ills, and also have Josh Hart on your team, by the way, who's going to become a major component, obviously, of what they do. If you're going to get all that, maybe it's the right move to take a swing at a transformative offensive center who can just make you an unguardable offense. And you say, you know what? We're comfortable going all in on offense because we feel like we could do enough on defense to make it work. I don't know if any of that made any sense, but that's kind of where my mind is at in terms of why they made this trade. Let's toss it to you, and then we'll bring DJ up here.
It definitely makes sense. The first thing you asked was about timing, and I would pose to you, what happens on Monday?
As far as what?
Training camp.
If they didn't make this trade, what happens on Monday?
No. The mere fact that the season kicks into gear starting on Monday. A lot of teams, you try to tie up loose ends perhaps before everyone's in the building. And if you're the Knicks, they could have done, you said, why did they pick this time? I would imagine they picked this time instead of, say, the deadline, because they need time to get things to gel. Because I have no doubt that Karl-Anthony Towns is going to see significant time at the 4. In fact, if you told me that the Knicks make a trade at some point for a 5 to play next to Karl-Anthony Towns, and that when they need to go with Cat at the 5, they do it, would fully believe it. But you need to also allow for time to accrue, and these guys need to get comfortable with each other. And in order for that to happen, you want to maximize the amount of comfortability. And by doing that in September, as opposed to February, it's not, okay, we've got 30 games in a tight race to go before the playoffs. It's, we have a whole season. If we need to work out kinks, we can try it in November. We can get it in December. We can get on the right path and things can start to click if they don't already. But you mitigate that margin of error by bringing that guy in-house sooner. And I think that is a huge portion of it. And I totally agree from an offensive standpoint. It gives you a different look. But it also gives you a lifeline contractually. It gives you the ability to tap into something where you have a player in Julius Randle who simply is not efficient. Like, how many times over the years have we looked at what the Knicks, we've looked at what the Knicks are doing from a shooting standpoint, at the players they have cycled out and the players they've brought in. And every single time we've looked at it, especially from a catch and shoot perspective, and we could talk about double teams and ISO and all of that. And it's all valid. 3-point shooting. All of these things that matter to the Knicks. And this feeling of, well, Julius is great, but he doesn't do some of these things.
He is
at all.
Yeah. There's a reason why Zach Lowe, may his ESPN career rest in peace, when he talked about Julius on a few occasions over the last few weeks, the term that hit home the most for me was ceiling raiser. And the reason why Julius Randle doesn't have a whole lot of value around the league right now, and why it was the Knicks, the only place that they found to trade him was a trade where, and we haven't even talked about this from Minnesota's perspective, which I think is somewhat equally fascinating. Like, he is a non-shooting, non-defending 4 who is best when he has the ball. And he's 30, over 30, or whatever he is, about 30. And he's about to get paid. He's about to want to get paid. Let's just say that. And that's why when Lowe and Bobby Marks went through a bunch of fake trades on one of the last Low Post podcasts that hit the airwaves, some of the names that they were bandying about as potential Julius Randle trade returns, people were like, what? What? The Knicks, are they on drugs that they would consider these trades? And again, these are two plugged in people who, like, if that's what the market is, that's what the market is. So what do? You trade for a guy who's immensely talented in Karl-Anthony Towns, but because of his contract, did not have a ton of value elsewhere around the league. In a way, these two teams needed each other. And I had a feeling they were going to find each other eventually. I used to think it was going to happen tonight. Well, I was seeing a fucking movie. And on that note, let's bring up DJ Zullo up here.
Right, take a deep breath, everybody. Take a deep breath.
I don't think I've breathed
Since
I came on here.
Okay.
Yeah.
Everybody take a deep breath and reset.
I'm good.
7,700 people watching live. Thank you for tuning into this emergency live stream. If you are just tuning in and can't read the description, the Knicks traded Julius Randle for and Dante DiVincenzo and the Detroit pick for Karl-Anthony Towns. If you want to get the transactional impact of what just happened, it's the first 35 minutes of the show. Now we go
not really, because we don't know.
We don't really know what the transactional impact is, but you guys did your best, and I this is why people come to us. I agree. But now I need the defender of Julius to join us and make some sense of this, because DJ, we did a Julius Randle Hall of Fame a month ago.
Yep.
And where I come down on this, I'm still processing it. I haven't processed that Cat is coming. I haven't processed that Randle is leaving. To John's point, we're never going to see the Villanova collective play together.
Fucking wild.
That aspect is still kind of crazy to me. So I go to you, DJ, and say, you're okay. John has, go ahead.
Very briefly.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry. I mean this. I'm not saying this facetiously. I'm sorry that one of the, if not the first thing out of my mouth was, let's honor a guy who is unequivocally, say that again, unequivocally one of the 20 greatest players in franchise history. There is no doubt. Take it from me, who did a top 75 Knicks ranking a few years ago and has look back on it frequently to be like, where does Julius rank now? Where's Julius rank now? He's one of the 20 greatest Knicks ever. He's I think 50, top 50, whatever. He's one of the greats. So there needs to be space, and there will be space, and maybe we'll get a little bit from DJ right now, to just sit here and recognize a guy who came to this franchise when they were the laughing pile of dog shit. Forget the NBA, in professional sports. And he came here. And all he did was he made 3 All-Star teams, 2 All-NBA teams, and helped the franchise go to the playoffs 3 times, when they've been to the playoffs 3 times in the previous 20 years. So we're going to talk more about Julius, but I had to say that because it was shitty that I didn't say that earlier.
All good. Glad you did. He will be missed. We'll talk about him at some point and what his legacy was here. So DJ,
yes, sir.
The Knicks traded Julius Randle for Karl-Anthony Towns. Your initial thoughts as a basketball fit?
If Karl Towns is your center, I think the fit is great. I think if the goal here is that you're going to all in on maximizing spacing around Jalen Brunson, if you're going to play the 5-out type of offense that we see in Boston, that we've seen some of these high level teams play, if that's the goal here, if he's going to be your primary 5, despite the premium they paid, I can't argue with the decision to bring in a player I think, and you guys might have touched on that. I've been in and out listening. Who is, I think, an historically good offensive center, one of the great.
He is. Just ask him.
He'll tell you, greatest shooting big of all time in the history. And he's got I don't think he is, but he's got a decent argument to be made, especially off the catch, off movement. I mean, he is not just a standstill 3-point shooter. He could do it in a variety of ways. He was a much better pick and roll operator last year with Gobert. There are things that he's developed playing the 4 with Minnesota that he can, that is, I think, additive. But I think if the Knicks are bringing him in to be the 4, and if, as Jeremy alluded to, their goal is ultimately to bring in a center to play alongside him, I think the Knicks got worse if that is their intention. Now, I think this front office is too savvy to go into and make this move to trade DiVincenzo, to trade Randle for a power forward who is still a very good offensive player, but just is not at the same level playing against other big wings, other 4s. I think this front office knows that if you're going to pay this premium, you have to tap into what makes Karl-Anthony Towns special, and that's him playing the 5, and you figure out the defense.
I want to ask the first question here because we have spent a lot of this summer talking about a potential Knicks death lineup, and it got more attention recently when Thibodeau made his comments to NBA.com and talked about playing Julius at the 5. And the whole time, and I'm not smart enough to think of this on my own, I steal from people like you and Benji and other smart folks around the internet, but mostly you two. I never thought of it as Randle at the 5. I thought of it as Randle at the 5 on offense, but I thought of it as OG at the 5 on defense. And I am wondering if they look at this as, well, now we get that in our, again, sounds great. Now we get to have our cake and eat it too, because now we have this on, Cat is the 5 on offense, which is like, for as wonderful as it was to think about Julius as the 5 in the death lineup, I would argue thinking about Karl-Anthony Towns as the 5 in the same death lineup is more exciting.
Mm-hmm.
And does it really make that much of a difference whether it's Julius Randle or Karl-Anthony Towns? It may make a difference in
defensively.
In terms of the role that Julius would have played defensively versus the role that we anticipate Karl-Anthony Towns potentially playing defensively. You see where I'm going with this, right?
Yeah, I think there could be a big difference actually, because I think the aspect to the whole thing with Towns is, if you look at some of the rim protection numbers, I mean, he's never been great at it, but I think he has developed into a reasonable defensive center as a rim protector, strictly because he's a giant. He gets in the way of things, and he's long. And you think about his, I mean, look, you have those things. You have decent agility. It's like your ceiling's pretty high as a defender, protecting the basket. And then as a pick and roll, the thing about Julius, like defending pick and rolls has always been like a struggle for him. You can't play him in drop against you put him in an aggressive coverage scheme. You're asking a lot of him as, in terms of the effort he's going to have to put forth. Towns has become like a pretty good, like, show and recover big. Again,
we talked about this earlier this summer. We had this conversation.
We did. So listen, that it's going to require, and this is like where Tibbs is going to be really tested here. You can't play Towns in a strict drop and expect like a quality defense. It's going to have to be a very different defensive system that Thibodeau has deployed when he was in Minnesota with Towns, where it didn't work. And then, since he's been with the Knicks and he's had more traditional drop centers, Towns is not that type of player, but that's not to say you can't build a good defense around him. He doesn't have Gobert. He has 2 all-NBA caliber defensive wings. So it's very different, but you can still build a good defense in my mind with Towns at center based on the talent around him. And then you talk about the death lineup. I mean, I have not begun to really process the amount of offensive talent Brunson, Bridges, and Towns as just a trio has. I mean, I think Bridges, like, it's ridiculous in terms of, like, I think Bridges, I think where it ended with the Nets, I feel like he's being undervalued as an offensive player. We know about Brunson. He's elite. Towns at the center spot, he's elite. That group, and then you have Anunoby with his cutting and his shooting, and as a corner guy, this is a really dynamic offensive lineup. And if Josh Hart is starting, you have him pushing the pace and the rebounding aspect. And then before I turn it back, I do want to, just before I forget about it, the thing I worried about the most with Julius and Anunoby as your 4 and 5 is that the defensive backboards I thought were going to be a major problem. And I talked about this in the chat with the rest of our KFC group many times.
KFS. We're not a checking company.
Sorry. Listen, it's late. It's almost midnight.
You're making me hungry.
Probably not the first time I made that mistake.
2 pieces of mashed potatoes.
There you
11
go.
Herbs and spices.
You were saying.
Anyway, Towns is an excellent defensive rebounder, and I think he's going to, despite some limitations as a defender, he's going to rebound the ball. And I don't think the Knicks are going to give up a lot on the defensive backboard. So if you're going to get a stop, you're going to be able to close those possessions much better with Towns versus a Randle situation there. So that's another piece of it that I'm, excited about. But I think it just comes down to it's got to be Towns at the 5. I'm going to harp on that until we get a definitive answer, maybe sooner than later, regarding how the Knicks are going to deploy him. But I think it has to be that way. I have a lot of reservations about this trade if the plan is not that. So, we can talk more about it or go somewhere else.
Can we at least agree that whatever happens in the not only this regular season, but in regular seasons moving forward, is probably not necessarily going to be indicative of what happens in the postseason, is how they deploy their guys?
Yeah, that's fair.
I mean, we'll see what they do, but I actually want to go here. We could go around the horn. You just pitched Josh Hart as a starter. I'm curious what everybody else thinks. Jeremy, who do you think is the starting lineup of this team right now? And for ease of conversation,
trade.
For ease of conversation, let's leave Mitch out because we know at the very least whether Mitch is on the team or not, he's not going to be playing basketball until December, at least.
Gosh, it really comes down to: is Cat going to be viewed as a 4 or a 5 from the jump? Right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, isn't
this is true?
That's everything.
I still want to imagine that the way that with Tibbs starting games, that he would rather have Hart bring the energy off the bench. Like, I'm at the point where is he going to go with Sims as starting next to Cat? And I'm not saying I would do that. To be clear, I'm trying to get inside Tibbs's insane mind of what's most important to him.
What about Precious?
See, I feel like, yes, if you had Precious as a 4, which we know that he seems to like, there is the complementing factor there.
Andrew,
I can't get over it that you just said Precious. We can't escape it. We're going to get more Precious at the 4, and now it might make more sense because the center can shoot. I can't get over that.
But here's the thing. Here's the thing. You could call it whatever you want.
Mm-hmm.
If Precious is on the floor with Karl-Anthony Towns, functionally, he is a 5 on offense. It's the same logic as if OG and Randle, like technically it's OG at the 5 or Randle at the 5. One's the 5 on offense, one's the 5 on defense. Because but there's
isn't your traditional rim protector. Because Precious would be the center. I agree with you. I think opening night, Cat is starting at center. I'm taking Ian Begley's word right now that per league sources, that the biggest need is at center. Look, I am hoping that Tibbs is looking at this and seeing what OG at the 4 was, with Mikal now being able to be in the lineup. So I'll say Josh Hart, at least to start, is your 2. What's up?
I'd like to. So Yossi Gozlan said it sounds like the New York Knicks will make up the rest of $8.8 million outgoing salary required by sign and trading free agents. That means it could be everyone else who played on the team.
But hold on, we may have to revisit this because they only have, in addition to being able to sign vet minims, and also, by the way, they're not that far away from the second apron. You're telling me you can't? Are you sure you can't sign and trade a taxpayer mid-level exception guy?
You cannot. It doesn't work. You can't use that. It's only for signing. If it's non-taxpayer, then you can do it. If it's taxpayer, you cannot do it.
You can. It is in the portion of the year where you cannot aggregate minimums for salary purposes. You can't do that until December 15th. If someone has to explain to me how you are going to make up $8.8 million, and Deuce apparently has been reported that is not in the deal, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Is there Evan Fournier ain't walking through that door. I literally just don't know how they're doing this money wise.
Well, keep in mind, remember Shake Milton, he didn't sign he wasn't signed and traded with the minimum contract. He was signed and traded with the max percentage of what he was eligible to earn as a non-bird rights player. So it didn't count. But listen, because when the Knicks did the Bridges trade, They had
Sure.
Bogdanovich. They had
Yeah.
Diakite, who was on a minimum deal. And they also had Milton, who was not on a minimum contract.
And now
So
they have
the
Jeffries to
Knicks-
use in that capacity.
Right. But they can also use other free agents
Who?
at their disposal. Charlie Brown Jr. would be another name. Any of the guys that they
Dwayne
have
Washington,
not renounced, right? Anyone who they haven't renounced rights to, they can sign and trade them. It's just a matter of roster spots because it's up to 21.
Non-minimum deals.
Right. So that's how
Wow.
you get it done, where you don't have these minimum contracts that
Wow.
are stacked. You have non-bird rights earning their max, which are greater than the minimum amounts, just like Shake Milton when they did the Bridges trade.
So
And
hold on.
Here's the thing.
Yeah,
Here's the thing. If you're able to do that, right, and you're keeping Mitchell Robinson, it goes to the theory, which is that the Knicks are still interested in either getting a big using Mitchell Robinson's salary at some point this year or bringing Mitchell Robinson back, which goes further into my hypothesis, which is that they see Cat as more of a 4 and a 5 functionally when they need to, but that they at least want the option of a rim protecting big at the 5 and can mix and match whenever they want.
To answer the question that I posed before, I'm sorry to disagree with you, Jeremy. I think they see Cat as a 5. I think they're going to play
I'm not
Cat
saying
mostly
they
at the
don't
5.
see, but there's confusion because I'm not saying they don't see Cat as a 5 at all,
Okay.
right? That's not what I'm getting at. What I am saying is that the Knicks clearly like versatility,
Yeah,
but they want more than
that's
just
why
that.
they made this trade. So they could play this guy
Of
at the
course.
4 sometimes and at the 5 sometimes. Yes.
Right. But if Mitch is still here, right? And
Yes.
if Mitch gets healthy,
Sure.
what position is Mitchell Robinson playing? It's obviously the 5. And then Cat would mix and match when Mitch is not on the floor or when he's not healthy.
Are you
But if
discounting
they
the possibility?
trade Mitch at any capacity as well, I'm of the mindset that they're likely looking to upgrade at the 5, not necessarily at the 4.
I think it makes sense. So now, assuming Mitch is not in this trade, which the reporting indicates he won't be. Well, first of all, we don't know who they have to get something back from Charlotte because sorry, very quick detour. Salary matching rules right now, if teams are below is this below the first apron or the second apron?
What's the question? I can answer it.
It's so where it's if outgoing is between 7.25 and 29 million, you get to increase it by another 7.5. There's a 7.5 wiggle room, which would seem to be applicable here, I think, as for Charlotte's purposes. But is that for teams over the first apron, or I think if you're over the first apron, you may not get the benefit of that doubt. But then again, Charlotte is
$23 million in first apron space. Charlotte does.
Charlotte is the one that we have to be paying attention to here. So they can intake. Let's just say they intake. No. If it's outgoing, then it's only 200% because they're the ones sending back lower outgoing salary. So if it's up to 7.25 million, the outgoing salary could bring back 200% plus $250,000. So if the Knicks have 8 point whatever million to make up, that means Charlotte would need to, unless I'm missing something here, that they would need to send out like something real, like a real thing.
They're a first apron team now. So financially, right. But they're sure the math needs to even out.
I think they need to send out. And again, like, I think the Knicks need to get up into like the teens here, which I think, again, functionally, I guess they could do. But I'm very curious what Charlotte would be sending back. I mean, I'm looking at their cap sheet right now. Cody Martin makes $8 million. They have Nick Richards, our old friend Nick Richards, who maybe he's factoring in here. We'll see. I actually would not be shocked in the least if they ended up with Nick Richards at the end of this thing.
Can I read an Ian Bagley tweet just to go back to the positional designations, which I agree mostly with Jeremy, and I don't think we're even disagreeing with Jeremy that what the Knicks see Cat as is a 5 that can play the 4 in certain situations, in certain games, in certain matchups. I'm more going to what lineup I think we'll see on opening night. And I mean, look, I could see him going with Sims to start or Precious to start, but the lineup we see in closing time is Josh Hart with the other four. You know, so that's
I
one.
think
And this
sure.
vaguely. So that's why the starting lineup. I don't know how much. It's obviously the question we go to, but I wonder if the most important lineup is when he goes to Josh Hart, the Villanova trio, which is now just a trio with Anunoby and Karl-Anthony Towns. Per Ian Begley, the Knicks, in touch with team, felt they had a great opportunity to address the biggest need at center in trading for the 4-time All-Star and 2-time All-NBA player Karl-Anthony Towns. They see Towns as a great fit, 28, with their overall high-end talent and someone who complements the rest of the core well. So that specifically says center. So I wonder if Ian, in his reporting, was like, let me see, are you looking at him as a 4 or a 5? And sees this as addressing their need at center.
Without knowing anything else about the trade, right now, the Knicks' top 7, I don't think there's any question about this, is it's not in any particular order: Jalen Brunson, Karl-Anthony Towns, Mikal Bridges, OG Anunoby, Deuce McBride, Josh Hart, and Precious Achiuwa. Did I miss anything? Because I'm leaving out Mitch, because Mitch is not playing basketball for a while.
Yep.
And then, so we're some of these, the Jericho Sims and Tyler Kolex and Cameron Paynes of the world, maybe the Marcus Morrises and Landry Shamits of the world.
So are you guys worried about that bench a little bit?
I don't know how you can't. I mean, if it wasn't for OG's injury history, and actually not that Karl-Anthony Towns is a picture of health either.
Well, there's that, and then he's got 4 fouls in every third quarter. So there's that issue
over
as well.
Yeah. It depends. This is gonna be a weird way I go to this, but if Tyler Kolek is your backup point guard to start, then I'm worried about the defensive side of it, but not necessarily the offensive side of it. If they go to Campaign, then it's Josh Hart, Deuce, Precious, and Campaign off your bench, and you're going to really need to take advantage of staggering, which I think they were going to stagger anyway.
They just feel light especially at the wing. I mean, you lose OG for 2 weeks. I mean, it feels like it's going to be a struggle to have enough credible bodies there to
hold on. You have Mikal Bridges is the NBA's Iron Man, and Josh Hart's pretty close.
Yep.
And we know one of those guys is capable of playing 48 minutes, and the other one is pretty close, because I think he led the league in minutes, right? At one point in his career.
Yeah, I was gonna say, if you're thinking they're short at the wing, the best way to find a wing backup for Josh Hart is to play Josh Hart as his backup too.
That's a good point.
I was going to say
Mikal Bridges.
I was going to say, if you think the Knicks are short at the wing, you should apply for a position within the Adams administration.
Oh dear God, I thought you were going KFC with that reference, but
no one saw that clip besides me.
We all did, but I didn't know we were getting some references to the former mayor of New York. We now
I know what's up. I'm hip with the
we now
news.
acknowledge Jalen Brunson.
Is he the former mayor of New York?
I have no idea. I just don't acknowledge him. Jalen Brunson.
Karl-Anthony Towns is the new mayor.
Yeah, we gave him the key to the city. Okay, DJ, thank you for jumping on. Before you get out of here, I think this is actually appropriate to do. And John started it, and I think we need to take like 10 minutes or however long it takes. What Julius Randle meant to this franchise, where we were as a franchise in 2019, especially on at the end of June, when things didn't go our way and they went the Nets' way, right? And the consolation prize of Julius Randle and how he was treated as a consolation prize during a season that between a 4-18 start and a laughing head coach, where he had some personal stuff and tragedy come up, and for him to be the spearhead behind a season that we all fell in love with, this team and this culture that was being built, the we hear of it all, the most improved player of it all, and coming out of the pandemic, and I'll just say personally, the first good thing I've enjoyed was watching Julius Randle play basketball for this team. And I think we should spend a little bit of time just talking about warts and all. Yes, like the fit and everything, and we'll see what happens in Minnesota. But what he was able to accomplish here, I think we should take some time to do so. So, John, if you want to go first, or we can go to DJ, I'll let you go first.
I will say this. It's going to sound weird. Maybe this is the exit Julius Randle deserved. Maybe going out in a weird way on top, where an entire fan base was at the very least curious what he would look like with this group. And there's a lot of people who are, I don't want to say apoplectic right now, but like pretty beside themselves that they will not get a chance to see Julius have an opportunity to bring this thing home, this thing that he started. For as much as his career here has been up and down, no one, I think, will think of him in a negative light because he is going out at this time and in this fashion. I think people will remember the good, and I think people will appreciate everything that he did in getting them to the point where they clearly, again, he is essentially going to serve as the final outgoing piece in what, to build what they view as a championship roster, which there's a whole lot of irony in there. And like a name that comes to mind, and God knows it's not an apples to apples comp, but like DeMar DeRozan, with the Toronto Raptors. I seriously though.
No, I'm laughing because I was.
You were gonna. Sorry, I stole. Yeah. Okay, I stole it. I stole it from you. I'll turn it over to you,
baby.
Right?
Yeah. Same.
No, and like, but like, you talk to. I don't talk to a lot of Raptors fans, but my understanding is that if you did talk to a Raptors fan, they will just speak glowingly about DeMar DeRozan and what he meant for the franchise, and they don't get to the point that they got to without DeMar doing what he did and growing in the way that he grew, just like we saw Randle grow from a guy who was talk about a free agency afterthought, to an all-NBA caliber player who, despite those accomplishments, was not viewed by many people as an all-NBA caliber player, despite the accomplishments. So,
Jeremy.
I really respect Julius Randle. And I found myself appreciating his game more, almost in a counterculture way. He's only human. We all are. I thought he was held to a standard that I never really felt he should have been. This is an excellent player, an all-NBA caliber player who we can also accept was a floor raiser and not going to be the ceiling raiser that was needed. But because this is New York, had to be now. Had to be, what have you done for me lately? And he would do amazing things. And then he would have, the thumbs down gate, or he'd get ejected playing against the Kings, and you can't do that. I would go to games, and the amount of times I'd hear people shouting bum about their own player, it made me appreciate him more, because it's not easy to thrive here. And this is someone who, John, you mentioned top 20 player in franchise history. He absolutely is that. And I've always had lingering concerns, of course, but it doesn't mean you have to show someone the door right away. There's a time and a place. And I don't know if right now is the time. It's probably the place, considering it's New York. I don't know. But there was always something about Julius that felt like an underdog story. Even though this is someone who went to the University of Kentucky, drafted 7th overall, like prize prospect, destroys his leg the very first game he ever plays, learns from his mistakes, maddening on the court from time to time. Defense, questionable, confounding, just a perplexing player. And yet at the same time, there was something about him where you felt like when everyone wanted to avoid this team like the plague, he came through. And yeah, he got a lot of money to do it. No one's disputing that. But the fact that he took so much pride in helping to turn this team around is something I will always appreciate. It's the point that Andrew's making about that We Here season. We all needed it. That was the worst fucking year of so many people's lives. The isolation, the death. We can go into so many personal details. But to rally around that team and how Julius was the engine for it, to see playoff basketball for the first time in I don't know how long. I mean, I do. It's too late for math. Point is, I look at Julius and I'm grateful. I'm appreciative of the work he's done. And I know that wherever he goes next, which for all we know, may not be Minnesota. He might be moved somewhere else. Like Minnesota doesn't necessarily play the exact way that Julius plays. He could be on the move too. And I hope that wherever he lands, he's able to find success. And I'm really excited to figure out what this new chapter is with Karl-Anthony Towns and how the Knicks play with him and how they incorporate him into this team. But yes, we don't have to be super lovey-dovey about Julius Randle, but also we can absolutely appreciate all the good that he brought, because the good vibes that we have, so much of that was as a result of him. And so many things we hated were as a result of him. He's not a perfect player. And again, the standard he was held to, in my opinion, was always too high. But I really respect him. I felt for a lot of this time he was professional, even when it got hard. And, trades are never easy. I also say for Dante, crazy that he's gone. I truly thought he had as close to a de facto no trade clause as you could get amongst the other Nova guys. As crazy as that might seem. But he's gone. And the roster turnover between today or the last playoff game that the Knicks had and today, insane how things can change. And you truly can never predict it. Like, we get on here, make assessments. What does it matter? The Knicks will do what they do. We're merely on the outside looking in. So I just to go back to Julius and put a bow on it. I'm grateful for the opportunity that we had to see him, because he's a real legitimate talent for a team that has been a franchise and a fan base has been so starved of talent, and now they've moved on. And I think that's the right call in the end. I don't know if it's necessarily for Cat, but it's the right call based on how they're operating and their championship aspirations. It's a business.
Well said.
And I hope he gets paid.
Well said.
DJ.
Yeah, tough business, but it is one. The thing I go back with Julius, I know I've said this a few times on these airwaves, is that the thing that really impressed me so much about him was just how much he evolved as a player and as a person since that first season. If you look at just the skill development, the type of player he is now compared to what he was 4 years ago, I mean, the amount of skill development is truly breathtaking if you consider what he was in New Orleans before the Knicks got him. He is, in terms of his work ethic, his desire to make himself better year after year. It is not common for players at 26, 27 to continue to add to his game, and he was adding last year. And I'm sure he's going to come into this season with more added to his game, which is why I'm one of those, as you mentioned, John, one of those fans. I wanted to see it through because I thought there was more that he can develop, more synergy he can develop. But he's gonna have to do that somewhere else. And I think he's, as a person, and this is the other part that I think you have to talk about, I think he's ready for this move as a person, because he has evolved also in that way as his mental. He's talked about this so often, how much stronger he is mentally now than he was a couple of years ago. Jeremy mentioned the thumbs down game and some struggles. There has been a lot of things that has happened to him in his career that has tested him, and he has answered the bell each and every time, and he's gotten back up. And I think where he is now compared to where he was, he is a really strong-willed individual who might not have been like the perfect personality to lead a franchise, but for what, and Jeremy mentioned this, for what he was asked to do, I don't know if we could have asked any more of him in terms of handling just the amount of pressure and intense heat that the city can bring. And there were times where he didn't rise to the occasion, but he kept evolving and kept improving on the court, off the court. And he's talked about his family, how much that has imparted so much wisdom and peace and just ability to kind of put life into perspective and this game into perspective. But there's been players that have grown on me over the years. I don't know if a player has grown on me to the level that Julius Randle has grown on me the last year and a half. And I take the defender of Julius moniker. I take it to heart. I wear it proudly. I feel like he has gotten, for the most part, not from you guys, I think from the fan base at large, a bad rap here. And I think that there is not going to be a situation where it's going to be you're going to miss him when you lose him, because I think the Knicks did bring in a talent at the level of Karl-Anthony Towns that he's good enough to where you're not going to miss Julius on the whole. There's certain things I think that Karl Towns is just not going to provide that Julius can, and we'll have spend time talking about that. But this is a player that really bought into what this coach was all about, and the players, his teammates, despite some of the what you would think with his personality, really loved him. Julius was a real dude, man. He let you know how he was feeling at all times. I kind of compare him to Chris Webber in terms of like a guy that wasn't smiling a lot. You wonder, like, is he having fun? Is he just miserable out there all the time? But I just think that was, that was just who he was, and he didn't shy away from that. But I'm gonna miss watching him play. I'm gonna miss hearing him talk. I feel like he was a very like thoughtful person, and always had always made you think. It's a tough one, but as Jeremy said when he wrapped his nice takeout, this is a tough business, and it's a trade I think the Knicks probably had to make. But I'm gonna miss watching him play. He was a lot more good than bad, and a lot of all-stars, a lot of all-NBAs, and I'm sure he's gonna land on his feet in Minnesota or wherever else he lands. So gonna miss him.
Yeah, I think the only thing I'll add before we officially transition, when you develop a love for a team and for a core, they become like part of your family. I know it's cliche, but we're literally in the Villanova family here, as far as I'm concerned. The CAA mafia, whatever you want to call it. I know there's a Kentucky wing of it here with the Knicks, but like you mentioned, John, that the way he goes out is with people feeling the highest, and I understand the concept. This isn't like had a bad playoff series and he got traded with everybody saying, "Get him off my team." Hashtag trade 30. No, this came after a summer of a lot of Knicks fans going to war for this guy and like retweeting the hype videos of him and his rehab and him and what he's becoming in this city, being recognized by his now former coach and former president of basketball operations at the court that was dedicated to him. But that's to what Jeremy said, the tough part of the business. Like that's the last memory we have of Julius Randle, him speaking in New York City about how much he loves the city, and then he gets traded 24 hours later. I'm intrigued by what the Knicks do and what they look like, what Minnesota does, what they look like, where Randle ends up, where his career goes. But I will miss him as part of our family here. I'll miss Kaiden. I'll miss Kendra. I'll miss the Randle family. Like I'm a sucker for like if you're cute with your kids on Instagram, and that was like a thing I enjoyed. It was like Kaiden's reaction to the game. So, thank you, Julius. This turnaround was important to a lot of us, especially at Knicks Film School, and for the role you played in it. We'll always appreciate you for it.
Well said. All right. Well, DJ, thank you for hopping on.
Yeah, absolutely, guys. Thank you for having me.
So in 2 weeks, when they make the next blockbuster trade, you're in?
Yeah. Oh, I was talking to my brother. I was like, and so every big rumor that have been around the Knicks, other than Embiid, the Knicks have just traded for that player.
Yep.
It's like everyone that's been like rumored heavily to go to the Knicks, they're going to trade for them eventually. Apparently.
I got to be honest, DJ, like my initial reaction when this trade happened was like, oh, we know nothing. Like for a year we were like, not that we didn't know that we get something that cat could happen. Right. But it was like, are they going to go do it now? Maybe it's an in-season thing. No, it's going to happen before training camp. They'll never make a trade with Brooklyn. Haven't done it since '83. Oh, no, they'll trade 4 picks and the Bucks pick for Mikal Bridges. they can't trade with Toronto. CA, like they're suing them. Like I know CAA is the connection, but they'll never get Anunoby. They're gonna do it like right before New Year's. Like every single inkling I've had as far as timing is wrong, and it's like Leon Rose could do whatever he wants, and here we are with this roster that I now have to reassess 2 days before media day.
I'll go one step further.
Mm-hmm.
Who's to say that over the next year or 2 years that they don't do something equally as outrageous?
Well, I wasn't even going to bring it up on this show because this is too much already. But
no,
Jeremy, we've both.
I'm just saying. Andrew's bringing up a great point, which is that every single time we would say this won't happen. Like we can't keep being no because people. We have to be yes, and here's why. Like I'm at the point now where I can't, in good conscience, and maybe this changes, but at this moment, when I try to do a cap or no cap, I can't be like, no, logic tells me no, because logic went out the window months ago. It just did. So if something crazy comes up, it's hard to say, well, that can't happen, because we have real life examples of the exact opposite of what we would have thought happening. And that makes our jobs more fun, but also a lot harder. So it comes down to math. Math is going to be what tells us what happens.
Yeah. Well, say this. Look at the roster that Leon Rose inherited and look at the thing that they got now. One of those things is not like the other. Okay, DJ, thank you, sir.
Can I go to another one? One last
Sure.
one. Look at then and now look at now. 2 days from now is media day, or 3 days from now is media day. We were going to do our annual Claudio Casino bets. I have half of them written, and a bunch of them have Julius Randle in them. Some of them have Dante DiVincenzo written in them. Think about what the roster looked like a year from now. Will Tibbs play quickly enough minutes? Will RJ find a spot that replicates
Remember those guys?
Yeah, replicates his playoff performances. You know, can Mitch stay healthy through a season? What will Julius look like this year? Will the Knicks make a midseason trade? Oh, they'll make 4 in the next calendar year. Okay, not midseason trades. What a wild 10 months it's been. Maybe 8 months it's been.
8 months, yeah. And quickly was like, where are they going to find minutes? You know, with the minutes crunch, he gets traded. DiVincenzo, the minutes crunch, he gets traded. I mean, listen,
so that's
funny.
how you solve a minutes crunch.
Yeah.
Again, this is how you know this trade was that earth-shattering and had that many tentacles. We've been talking for 80 minutes, and this is the first time anybody's brought up minutes. Like, they had a very clear minutes crunch. Like, you talk to me all you want about small ball. Like, there was no way to solve it without making a significant shakeup.
So I don't know if you guys have touched on it, but my first read the trade, my first reaction was actually like, man, this sucks for DiVincenzo. Now that I'm thinking about it, like, I don't know if he pushed for this trade. I don't know if he wanted to be traded, but he's the only one, considering Bridges is going to get his deal, that's not been paid yet.
Well,
do you think he was, and I don't know if he was pushing for it, but do you think he's like upset that he's now potentially going to have a cleaner path to 25, 30 minutes in Minnesota?
I was thinking about it from a different perspective, which that's the better perspective. The one you just hit on. I was like, the Knicks know they're never going to be able to resign this guy without him going to unrestricted free agency. Now, maybe that wouldn't have been a big deal. It's also 3 years down the line, so we have a lot of time left before we have to worry about that. But like, his salary is so low that there was no universe that was going to happen. Your point is a better one. I'm sure. You know what? I bet he doesn't mind as much as we think maybe he minds.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah,
and he's in a winning situation, and the Knicks have done this now time and time again. Where they probably had, if they're going to trade Julius, it had to be for Towns in the grand scheme of things. But it's another situation where the Knicks have traded players to either a great situation where you can get playing time or to, a winning team. So
if the Knicks make the finals, the odds are they're either going to face the team that employs Isaiah Hartenstein, the team that employs Dante DiVincenzo, the team that used to employ Jalen Brunson, and who am I missing? Oh, Denver. There's not really any connection with Denver.
No, you forgot one. The team that now employs Quentin Grimes. Speaking of guys that were on the team a year ago today.
Yeah, no, that's true.
Yeah.
Anyway, okay.
Yeah, there you go. Thank you, guys.
Thank you,
Thank
DJ.
you,
We're
DJ.
gonna send Jeremy off too.
Okay.
So Jeremy, DJ, we'll see you at the next live stream, the emergency live stream.
All right.
My goodness.
Have a great night. Enjoy
Later,
it.
You
fellas.
too, guys.
See ya.
So you want to talk about the substance?
I gotta tell you, my favorite movie of the year.
My God,
You saw it?
I've heard enough. Is what I'll say. I've heard enough. Enough that I don't do I don't want to spoil anything. And to anybody that's queasy, I don't do body horror. So
Okay. Well, then don't see this movie.
I know enough. I was warned. So
The people in front of me were probably getting very annoyed by the end of the film because of how many times I blurted out, "No, please, no," and then by the end, I just was in an outright cackle.
mhm.
Yeah.
And did they realize you were talking about? Please don't take DiVincenzo from me. You know.
Well, I actually kept my composure when I saw the tweet. I did, and then I retweeted it, and then Dolores saw it, and she's like, "Do you want to go?" And I'm like, "No, we're not leaving this movie. Not at this point."
You're a good husband. You want to know who told
Oh
me?
no,
about the
she
trade?
didn't like the movie at all. I didn't.
Oh, she
wanna
didn't.
leave.
She was ready to leave. Oh, okay, gotcha.
Yeah, it was too much for her.
So you're a terrible husband.
So I'm a terrible husband.
There you go.
And,
know how I found
a bad
out?
podcaster because I didn't.
So lucky me, I stayed home watching pennant race baseball tonight. Shout out to the New York Mets who suck.
Sorry.
I was in a group chat. Well, not group chat. I was getting a lot of texts from a lot of Mets fans that I therapize with each night.
Mhm.
And then someone texted, "What the fuck?" It was Matt Hederman, one of our patrons who's always at our watch parties. He texted me, "What the hell?" And I'm like,
Oh, I
"What?"
have.
I thought he was looking at out of town scores. Like, did something happen in Arizona?
One.
And then I saw your tweet pop up because I don't have Bobby Marks on alerts. I have Woj on alerts. And then I was like, wait, what is John reacting to? And then I guess we should just give some behind the scenes away. We were told earlier today that the Knicks checked in on Karl-Anthony Towns. And I guess they liked what they saw, John. I believe they liked what they saw. Would you like to hear from the KFS audience?
I would. And apologies to the 13 individuals who have texted me who I have not texted back. I'll get back to you.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
Let's do it. Take your time with this first one. I'm gonna go pee.
Take my time with this first one. Sure, if you ask nicely. Jesse M starts us off. To me, Julius always felt like a wonky fit, even post OG trade. I like how this team played without him down the stretch. Wish him nothing but the best. So you rescued it a little bit at the end there, Jesse, but you made your feelings known at the top. Look, obviously the Knicks agreed with you to a certain extent. And you could be the biggest Julius Randle fan in the world. I'm not that, but I'd like to think I appreciated what he did, and I also believed in the possibility of what he could be. Sound like someone there. They found a gear that made me. I mean, this doesn't mean any. It doesn't mean anything. But I've never enjoyed watching the team as much as I enjoyed them in February, March, April, and May of last year. And that is not a reflection of Julius, but it is a reflection of something. And granted, a massive part of that team, he might have played more minutes than anybody on the roster after January 27th. Massive part of that team was Dante DiVincenzo. So that is why, for me, today is bittersweet. And it's bittersweet because of Julius, but like to a lesser extent, because I think in my heart, I always felt like Julius was going to go out. I never believed that Julius would be on the final version of this team. Sue me. Because I just, for the reasons that inspired you to send the super chat, I just questioned whether when you already have a Jalen Brunson as a guy who's going to have to play, upwards of 40 minutes a night in the playoffs, and he is such a liability, not through any fault of his own, but such a liability defensively. I always questioned, well, How are they going to play him plus Julius, who I also think is a liability defensively, plus a traditional 5 against teams that know how to exploit those sorts of 5s on the defensive end? And now they have swapped out one poor defender in Julius Randle for another poor defender or questionable defender, let's say, in Karl-Anthony Towns. The difference being you're in a way killing two birds with one stone by putting your poor defender at the nominal 5 and banking that getting one additional versatile, big, switchable wing defender between Jalen Brunson and Karl-Anthony Towns is going to make up for the fact that your bookends for your defense are not very good. And it is quite the gamble. And the last thing I will say, and I think GMAC is back, so we can go on to the next super chat. And I meant to say this earlier, but I'll say it now because I think this is an important point. The NBA very clearly in recent years, and again, I'm gonna shout out Zach Lowe so often, you guys are gonna be sick of it. Zach Lowe has made a point on his podcast and in his writing over the last few years to note that what was once a defense-first league, at least if you wanted to win championships, has over the last 10 to 12 years slowly shifted in the other direction to the point that you had what was the logical endpoint of that shift, which was the Denver Nuggets winning the championship 2 years ago. A team that when they're on, they're the best offense in basketball, and they were an average defense. I think the year they won the championship, they ranked, I don't know what they ranked, 12th, 13th, 14th, 15th, something like that. It wasn't great. But they knew their offense was going to be good enough. And when push came to shove, their defense would be passable given their offense. Now, you could tell me that the pendulum started to shift back in the other direction last year with Boston. And yet, I look at Boston and what they did acquiring a stretch 5 and Kristaps Porzingis, and I see a team that went all in on offense too. Their defense is obviously much better than Denver's defense, which is what makes them so frightening. But I just don't think you can compete for titles anymore unless you have the capability of putting forth one of the best offenses in the sport. The question obviously will be, are we sure the Knicks couldn't have had that level of offense without making this trade? And did they need to make this trade? And how their offense is going to be better? How much better did it get? That's the question. Ultimately how this trade is going to be judged. How much better did their offense? How much better did their offense get? Varun Jain, please make sense of this. For God's sake, make us feel better. I am beside myself. My boy, Dante DiVincenzo, they took away my boy. Well, we've been talking on here for the better part of an hour and a half. I hope that we have at least made sense of what their thought process was. I do think that there is going to be a subset of people, and maybe you're one of them, Varun, who I'm not going to be able to say anything that's going to make sense of acquiring a guy who, to put it politely, has had a checkered postseason career, and for whom there are significant questions about whether or not he will ever be able to be a major component of a team that wins it all. What I will say, and you could give me injuries as an excuse, and it would be valid. Karl-Anthony Towns had a playoff series against the defending world champion Denver Nuggets 5 months ago, whatever it was. That is leaps, bounds, any other words you want to use, better than anything Julius Randle has ever done in the postseason. And then he kind of shit the bed against Dallas. So to say that there is no evidence that Karl-Anthony Towns can't do it in the playoffs, it's not quite true. But make it a big swing. Thanks, for Twin Orange. What's going on, Twin Orange? I'm shocked. Talk me off the ledge. I think there's going to be a lot of that. Talk me off the ledge. Will Cat play the 5? We would look good with a stretchy 5. I need a beer. That's what it's about. It's about. I mean, I love Jeremy, and but this is going to be something that we are going to disagree on. The Wolves were fully in bed with Karl-Anthony Towns when they made the Rudy Gobert trade. They decided at that point that they were not in a position to pivot off of him. And I think they wanted to see how the Twin Towers thing would work. I think, not to say that the playoffs revealed that like it can't work, like they were in those games against Dallas, and who knows what would have happened against Boston. But I think between the questions about whether they were maximizing Cat at the 4, and then obviously the salary part of it, I think now the other end of the other side of the coin is you could say that Minnesota was in love with Karl-Anthony Towns, didn't want to trade to Karl-Anthony Towns at all, believe Karl-Anthony Towns could be a championship piece, a major championship piece, and they had to do this move for financial reasons. And this had nothing to do with, not nothing to do with basketball, but they basically were like, we have to trade this guy, and what's the best guy we can get back for him? And if you're Minnesota, I totally 100% would believe if you told me they scoured the league and this was as far as a return in talent, the best return that they were going to get. As far as like what does Randle and Gobert look like together and stuff like that, that's a different conversation. Thank you, Twin Orange. Sam Garcia, I don't know how to feel. I mean, I don't think any of us know how to feel right now. I'm you know, I've said how I'm feeling. Ultimately, I'm excited. And I think that probably came through over the first hour and a half of the show. I'm excited because, like, we don't have to wait any. Like, even after the Bridges trade, there was still a part of me where it's like, okay, but what's next? Because I always thought there was another shoe that was going to drop, and it was going to involve Julius Randle. And that is why I was like, all right, well, I'm excited about this season. I can't wait to see what happens. They're a title contender. They could win it all. But I think there's something else that's going to come down the road. Now, I don't have to worry about that anymore. Like, not to say they could never make another trade. This is it. This is the team. This is the team they believe can win the title this year. And you know what? They can. Not saying they will, but they can. Thank you, Sam.
So I'm just going to jump in. Your connection's a little choppy.
Let me come back out. Let me go out and come back in.
Same brain. So John's going to leave and come back, and then we will hopefully get his internet connection issues sorted out. You got me for a little bit, folks. Hi. Thank you, everybody, for still tuning in 90 minutes in to the emergency live stream where the New York Knicks traded Julius Randle and Dante DiVincenzo for Karl-Anthony Towns. The Detroit pick, which was heavily protected and probably not converting this year, depending on how optimistic you were on the Pistons. The impressive Detroit Pistons that won 14 games last year, potentially winning enough games to be the 12th, to be a 13th pick, I believe. It's top 12 protected, either top 10 or top 12. John will tell me in just a second. So that's where we are now. If you are watching live on YouTube, we appreciate it. Please remember to like this video. And if you're here for the first time, please subscribe. John is back. Hopefully we got his connection issues taken care of. Hi, John.
How am I looking?
You're looking good. Yeah.
Okay.
Are you plugged in or are you on Wi-Fi?
I'm on Wi-Fi.
You're on Wi-Fi. Okay.
It's
okay. I guess we'll find out how good it is. We'll see. We're gonna get back to the super chats. None other than Mr. Kevin Danishevsky.
Hello, Kevin. I am confused as to why Dante is in the deal and how they're making the salary work, but I'm okay with it. JB Hart McCall OG Cat is awesome. Thank you, Julius. Well, Ian Begley just told us why Dante's in the deal. Per a report he just tweeted out. This was a deal that wouldn't happen without Dante DiVincenzo, I'm told. That's why Dante's in the deal. As far as the salary stuff, I spent a few minutes while others were talking, trying to work out the numbers of considering the base year compensation issues that arise with re-signing Daquan Jeffries, Charlie Brown Jr., and Dwayne Washington Jr., and then trading those guys. And then factoring in the returning salary that is going to have to come back from Charlotte. I have no idea how they're going to make the money work. I have no idea who's coming back. All I know is I would be surprised if the reporting was the way it was and Mitchell Robinson or Deuce McBride ended up being in this deal. I think they're going to figure out a way to make it work because Brock Aller is a hell of a lot smarter than I am. Thanks, Kev. Ryan Huang, what's going on, Ryan? We lost Randall Devo, 6 firsts, all the swaps. Not all the swaps. Still got one swap left. Basically all our trade flexibility and iHeart for Randall and Bridges. You mean for Cat and Bridges? Someone talked me off the ledge because this team is not a championship contender. I'll offer my first strong disagreement of the evening. I think this team is absolutely a championship contender. And I think to think otherwise, like, I think one diminishes the offensive firepower that they are going to be able to put on the floor. Like, let's just say flat out, you are not going to be able to guard this team. There's no corollary. There's no except or but or any such thing. There's no way to guard this basketball team. They have a top 5, 6, 7 offensive creator in the sport in Jalen Brunson. And you are now pairing that player with, again, to call him the best offensive center in the league obviously isn't accurate because like Nikola Jokic and Joel Embiid exist. But as far as a pick and roll partner for a point guard, what are you supposed to do if you're an opposing team? How do you guard that pick and roll when you surround it with shooting? And one of those shooters is going to be Mikal Bridges, who is not just a shooter. And he's not even just a attack and closeout guy. He's a lot more than that. And the stuff that they're going to be able to do, like, they absolutely could have the best offense in the league this year. So if that's your starting place, and it's like, all right, can we approach a top 10 defense? And you're giving me OG Anunoby, Mikal Bridges, and Josh Hart to work with, where Josh Hart is your third best wing defender. I mean, they're like, to say this team isn't a chance, like, should they be favored over Boston? No, they shouldn't be favored over Boston. I'm not even sure they should be favored over OKC. But like, I think they could have won the championship last year if they were healthy and they had this roster. Absolutely, without question. Like, this team could win a championship any given year. And yeah.
No, you were finishing a sentence. Sorry, I just
and that comes at a cost. It comes at a cost. So yeah.
So now I ask you, because you sound very high on this trade. Knicks 53.5 over under.
Oh, over.
So now you take the over after this.
Oh,
trade.
without question. Without
Okay.
question.
Without question. Okay.
Without question.
So any of the defensive concerns that are presented or losing DiVincenzo.
Andrew,
John, I agree with you. I'm talking through it. It's okay.
This team is going to blow the doors off of opponents this year.
Mhm.
Opponents aren't going to know what to do, and because what are teams going to do? Teams are going to walk in and they're going to be like, "Oh, great, we just outscore them, right? We could just score on them. They're going to score on us, but we can score on them. Okay, good luck." Like, I get the cat of it all, to borrow an Andrew Claudio term. He's not a great defender, but he is being coached by a guy who has a slight bit of experience with him and maybe knows a thing or two about constructing a defense when you don't have the best defensive personnel, because he's only done it throughout his entire fucking career. If all Karl-Anthony Towns has to do is put forth some effort, and as DJ said, be big, he can do that. You know, I'm as curious as anyone as to like how much hedging they start to employ, like whether they try to go with some switching, even though obviously Karl-Anthony Towns is not an ideal switch guy, but like
And neither is Jalen Brunson too. So
yeah, exactly, and that is what makes it tricky. Because again, what are we talking about here? We're talking about fourth quarters against Boston. We're talking about fourth quarters against Philly. We're talking about fourth quarters against Milwaukee, and God willing, fourth quarters against the Western Conference champion. Which is again, nothing's guaranteed, you know, but this team's gonna be good.
I had the over. I'll stick with the over. I agree.
Ben McPherson, damn. Hoping the Cat would thrive under Brunson's leadership. Took last year's playoff team and replaced Devo, Hartenstein with Bridges and Cat. I love 30. That's one way to look at it. Like, they got much more versatile. They got much better on offense. And I say that with all due respect to Dante DiVincenzo, who was Klay Thompson for several months last year. They're going to be able to do some things, and they are going to put the fear of God in a lot of opponents. Not saying they aren't infallible, but they're going to be good. Thank you, Ben. Hushju, stunned, floored, excited, sad on a Friday night. I'm pretty sure those are all of the emotions in one sentence. Thanks, Hush. Twin Orange. Let's remember we now have a massive salary that we could trade in the future. I'll try to get myself off the ledge. Trust in Leon. Again, I get... I got to call Andrew back up here.
Sup?
What's the biggest reason you think people are on the ledge? Is it the Towns part of it?
Towns. Yeah, it's Towns.
The Towns part of it.
Yeah.
It's just interesting to me because, look, I've been pretty unequivocal. I have significant doubts about this guy and his ability to come up big in a big spot. If he just needs to be like a devastating offensive weapon for 3 quarters and learn how to not foul as much and just be smart and big on defense, I think he could do that. And I think the payoff is worth it. And then you add him to the most mentally tough team in the league, one of the most well-coached teams in the league, a team with incredible leadership in terms of their best player and just in general. I would argue that they're in as good a position to insulate him from his own Townsism as any team in the league. To say nothing of the fact that he's back home. He's from the area. I wonder what that will mean. You know, as far as the massive salary we could trade in the future, Twin Orange, I would be lying if I said the thought didn't cross my mind hours ago. And there's a guy that plays in another city that also makes a lot of money that may be looking for someplace to go in not too distant future.
Crossed my mind as well. We'll see how
if
that
it didn't
goes.
cross your mind, then I don't know. Like,
We're talking about Giannis, by the way, for those who don't know what
I
we're
wish you wouldn't
alluding
have said
to.
it.
But that's the thing. They're the inside jokes for people that want to be on the inside. We should let in. You know.
Let everybody. Okay.
Yes.
Is my connection okay, by the way?
It's a little choppy, but we'll make it work. You're good. Debo, what's good?
What's going on, Debo? Struggling to love this deal. You don't gotta love it. I would actually be. I don't love it. I don't love it.
I think you like it.
Feels like Randle and Devo give us a better shot over Cat. How much did Julius's health and contract play a factor? I think the contract more than the health. That said, this is a guy who physicality is. I don't want to diminish his skill because his skill is immense, but his physicality is everything. And, you know, he is not the level of shooter that if that physicality starts to go, he'll still be able to be a incredibly productive offensive player. And with defense not being a strong suit, the thing with Towns is like he's a 7-footer who's one of the best shooters in the league. Like that by itself, like it should age well, and he's a little younger than Randle, obviously. And also it's again they had. I'm not saying this is why you make a trade, but they had the wiggle room. They had the wiggle room in terms of minutes. I know they're thin now. I know we're sitting here talking about Precious Achiuwa as our 7th man. That's a little scary. But like they have the horses. Like they're a little thin, but they also I like the horses that let me rephrase that. I like the horses that they have. So
I just realized the two guys that they had that everybody was talking about potential for 6th man of the year odds, DiVincenzo and Josh Hart.
Well, Hart may still come off the bench.
May still come off the bench. I think he won't. I think he will start night 1 at the 2.
So put some money on Deuce.
So that's the thing. They're 2 guys, DiVincenzo and Josh Hart, are now not part of the equation. Although we'll see, obviously, what happens with Josh Hart. But
listen, the Celtics won the championship with 6 guys, and one of those guys played 3 playoff games or 4 playoff games. You know?
Yeah. I'm not. The comment about the depth is different because they got their starting 5 is more solidified now. But the conversation around the Knicks was like, I just did a bunch of preview pods. But like, how good's their bench unit? How good is their depth? How good is their starting 5 and the different lineups they can go to? Now it's like, well, now they have a really good closing 5 that I'm excited to see offensively.
These are all there are 100 worthy questions that we could be sitting here asking right now. The only thing I care about like when it push comes to shove, fast forward me to, and I hope they get there, and you never know because shit happens in the NBA. Fast forward me to the last 5 minutes of game 1 against Boston. That's where I want to get to. Fast forward me to that. That's it. Then we'll get the answer to this trade. Duran visual variant. What's up from Vegas? Not sure how I feel about this. Join the club. Why couldn't they wait to do this trade? See how they played together first. It's maybe the best question. I think.
Did the Mitch injury escalate the timeline? Because that was my thought. That they went looking for a Mitch type or just like a backup type, like a Nick Richards, like a Capella.
No, that's not why.
Oh, never mind. I'm wrong.
Well,
did they scour the market and then
no,
Minnesota was like,
answer.
If you add DiVincenzo, it's done.
There's an easier market. There's an easier answer. NBA rosters could go to 21 in the offseason. Once you hit opening night, they go down to 15. This is going to wind up being a trade in which the Knicks send out 4 or 5 players and take in 1 or 2 players. That's not the sort of trade you can make in February. To say nothing of the fact that doing this kind of a deal on the clock with the trade deadline like approaching, because what is inevitably going to happen? One team's doing better than they thought. One team's doing worse than they thought. Like, they had the agreement now. Do I think the center injury thing played a lot to do with it? Do I think the Knicks, with their messaging and with what Tom Thibodeau said directly to NBA.com last week, were blowing a whole bunch of smoke up our ass? Absolutely. They clearly had no intention of going into a season in which the expectation was championship with Precious Achiuwa and Jericho Sims as their centers. No intention.
Yeah. That's fair. Next up,
Chris Carter. I hate everything. # fire Leon. We're gonna get some of this. And look, I'm not gonna yell at anybody tonight. Check with me tomorrow.
Check with you in an hour.
You know me too well.
Mm-hmm.
What I will say I think the man deserves the benefit of the doubt. That's it. Danny Gardner, as someone who has hated Cat for years, there was something about surrounding a guy with talent that talented with that skill set with proven winners. Well, Danny stole my, and he obviously sent this a while ago. And thanks to everybody for sticking around. Thanks for everybody who's been so patient waiting to get your super chat read and responded to. I appreciate it. We appreciate it. Yeah, you took the words out of my mouth, Danny. If you're going to put him in an infrastructure, this is the infrastructure to put him in. And I am excited to see how you know why I'm excited? Because Julius Randle has made the All-NBA teams, and yet you cannot like fill an arena with NBA media people. And like you could throw stone after stone and you will not hit anyone who believes in their core that Julius Randle is a top 30 NBA player, maybe top 35. Maybe you'll find someone that thinks he's a top 35 NBA player. Maybe. Everyone agrees that Karl-Anthony Towns is one of the 15 most devastating offensive weapons in the sport. No one questions that. Everyone questions whether he can keep his shit together and actually produce in the way that he would need to produce at both ends to win a championship. So, again, there is risk here. But the payoff, they traded for the payoff. We'll see if they get it. Hayden Freed. To the man I named my first ever pet after, thank you. Oh, there's also some engagement ring, solace.
Oh, the engagement ring fund? Yeah, I believe me. I turned to my wife, looked at her ring, and was like, "Oh my gosh, they just traded Julius Randle." Yeah. And even she obviously knows what that means, So,
Julius got me back into the Knicks and ultimately KFS. So, thank you, Julius, for that. A true Knicks legend is someone I will root for until he retires. Hashtag 30. Everybody should root for Julius Randle. Maybe not if the Knicks play the Wolves or whoever team he's on in the finals, but I'll always root for Julius.
Same.
Jack McMick. McMack? No, it says Jack McMick, right?
McMick. MCMC.
Right. MCMC. So many questions. Harder Deuce at the 2.
I did think about Deuce at the 2. We did see Deuce start playoff games. Like
he's the first name that I thought of.
Okay, so it's same brain here, and could Deuce be the 2, and then Kolek and Payne actually. That they make more sense as your backup guards if you wanted to go with them as your two backup guards, and then Josh Hart slides into his natural role off the bench. If you believe in Deuce's shooting being replicated this year to what it was last year, then it is a drop off with Donte, but it's still getting an elite 3-point shooter, and you get a better defender.
Why do I don't want to do something?
You don't think Deuce is a better defender than Donte?
I'm going to sound silly. Donte was really good when he wasn't defending the point of attack last year, when he didn't have to defend the point of attack. Now, Deuce is really good when he's not defending the point of attack.
Yeah, I was going to say, when he's not tasked with go chase Tyrese Halliburton around.
Yeah. Look, I will say that for as monumental as this trade was for so many reasons, will I believe this if I say it? I think I believe this. I don't think they make this trade without immense, and I mean immense faith in Deuce McBride.
Agreed.
Yeah. Anyway, let me read the rest of the comment. Sorry. Are we sure Mitch's injury status didn't surprise the Knicks? I think we're sure of that. Is another trade coming? Well, this trade is still not done yet, so yes. What
is another? This is our world now. Is another trade coming? Probably. Giannis is coming on Christmas. That's what's gonna happen. Something happen?
No. Ian points out the Timberwolves face the Knicks at MSG on January 17th.
It's a weekend game. I believe that we looked at that date for a specific event potentially.
Yeah.
I may have also brought that up as like, well, we need to calibrate because say the Knicks trade for Karl-Anthony Towns. Then when Minnesota comes into town, that date matters. you know. So
Yeah. Anyway, you're not dreaming, Jack. Danny Gardner. That is very alluring. I think in reference to what he was saying before. Thanks, Danny. Mr. Fabro. I got you. One reason I'm thankful for KFS is that you help me understand how I should feel about this in a way that 1,000 crying Julius stands can't. I don't know that we did much tonight other than say a lot of words. This one, like, the OG Anunoby trade was the easiest trade to understand in the history of the franchise, as far as I was concerned. Which is why I responded to it in the way that I did, that upset a lot of people, because I was just like, oh, it makes all the sense in the world. Why are you upset, people who have hearts? And then the McCall trade.
How dare them? How
dare people have feelings? The McCall trade was a wild risk and a wild swing, but like, it was right there for you. Like, everybody knew what was happening. Like, it's like, okay, well, the Knicks felt they didn't want to wait around for a superstar anymore. So they got the best role player in the league, who could do a little bit more than be a role player, and they paid the price to get him. Great. Like, this is, to wrap your head around this, I'm trying to think of a comparable trade in my lifetime. Like, forget Knicks trades. What, Andrew?
Bondi brings up a great point.
The preseason game? Yeah.
Yeah, the Knicks play the Timberwolves in the preseason at the Garden on Sunday the 13th.
Well, that'll be an interesting one. I'm trying to think of a trade in NBA history. Man, this is probably a whole podcast, but maybe we'll do this for our Patreon pod this week. I gotta tell you, there's nothing that comes to mind at the moment that where I could think of something that is comparable to this.
In that it's not completely clear who won it on first glance, or who's getting the better player versus who's not?
No, in that there's so much going on.
Okay.
And it is this. These are two title contenders. These two teams have 2 of the 5 or 6 best odds to win the title this year.
Could you argue Kyrie for? So the tough part is Kyrie for Isaiah Thomas. Nev doesn't end up because while Isaiah Thomas was first team All NBA that year, we all knew
they knew
that
they knew about the injury.
Bomb. Yeah,
they knew about the injury already.
So in the moment, it was like you're getting Kyrie with 1 year left, or I guess 2 years left, and Isaiah Thomas off of an All NBA season that a lot of people didn't think was sustainable, or replicable. That's the first one I can think of, but you're right that it probably takes some research and some thinking.
I don't think there is one, because every other like there have been massive trades. There's massive trades all the time. Kevin Durant, the trade that sent him from Brooklyn to Phoenix, massive. But again, there's nothing to think about. The new owner wanted his shiny new toy. That's it. Okay, great, we're done. Like, this is just, and the timing has a lot to do with it. So again, to Mr. Fabro and everybody else who was hoping to come here and getting like absolute crystal clarification on everything, I apologize, because this one is just not that. It's not that sort of deal. Like, it's just there's so much going on here, but we'll keep talking about it. Okay. THWDSMN.
Nailed
GMAC.
it.
What?
Nailed it.
Yeah. Make it make sense. Knicks therapy school, and the season hasn't even started yet. I hope we've made it make sense. It's a ceiling play. It's a ceiling. The Knicks, I think, is this overly simplistic, Andrew? The Knicks traded floor for ceiling.
Yeah, you're playing for the ceiling play here. If you think that Cat can raise your ceiling, then you make the trade. Randle raised your floor enough.
But even that, I don't feel comfortable, because what is the floor of this team? Is this team healthy? Are they losing in the first round?
That's why I think you're nailing it. That there's no clear. I'm not 100% sure they got better today. I'm not 100%.
Oh, see,
sure. I'm like
Mhm.
55% sure because of what I think this team can do, and I trust the infrastructure. But like, I was already confident in this team being like a team that could win a bunch of games,
we-
like 58, 59, and get to the conference finals. Like, it wasn't going to shock me if
So-
this team made the finals this year, and it still won't. But I don't after this trade be like, oh, now I'm even more confident.
Like me.
Right.
Well, I wasn't confident. Now I think they have a real chance.
You have more confidence, yes,
Yeah,
than you did
I-
before. I have
Oh.
the same amount of confidence as I did before.
Before this trade, the Knicks were going to be left with two options. Either we have two immensely important pieces on our bench to close games. I'm purposely not saying who those pieces are because it doesn't matter. Pick your
Mhm.
two. Or we are playing without a center. And we are banking on small ball working with a player who will be our nominal 5, Julius Randle, who has shown zero indication
That's
that
the
he,
pan
that's a
motion for
zero.
0. Yes.
That he could be a small ball center in the NBA on defense. I understand OG, but so, and then the trade off with that is, okay, well, OG's your 5 on defense. Well, okay, great. So we're going to regularly put a guy at the 5 who can't stay healthy, and we're going to have him banging down low. That's another part of this that I think that had to factor in here. The fact of, okay, great, you're going to have OG guard 5s. How long is that going to last? Before your $200 and how many $1 million investment is on the shelf again. So those were the only realities. Those two realities. They have cashed in their chips. They have cashed in their chips in the best way possible because one of those chips, for as mentally as important as he was to your team, had, in comparison to his production, no trade value around the league. And in doing so, in cashing in those chips, you solve the position of need in a way that you might not be comfortable with, but you at least have an answer.
I don't disagree with anything you just said. I think that's why I'm still very high on this team. I just was also still very high on this team in the short sample size of a 7-game series, having more talent and abilities to win than the other team. And I still have those same confidences. I just now have another wild card in what will I get out of Karl-Anthony Towns, which I'm not as confident as. I didn't have as much confidence in Julius either. Like, I wanted to see it.
Yeah.
And it's one of those like the devil you know type of things. And you brought up the Denver series. Like, I understand what Cat was in that series. I also saw them go to spurts in that game 7 with Naz Reid instead of Cat. So
yeah.
It's why I'm like, this isn't as much of a slam dunk that they got better today, especially, and this is the part you'll appreciate, the losing of the weapon that is Dante DiVincenzo.
Well,
that's the part of this that's like, fine, maybe OG does get hurt. I had a multitude of wings I could go to if I wanted to. Now, Campaign is my 9th man. So,
well, and I think the reality was that in making the Mikal Bridges trade, Dante DiVincenzo became a luxury. That's an oversimplification.
It is, because I'm specifically referring to when OG Anunoby potentially misses time.
Well, sure, but I'm more referring to when you're in a league with finite resources and you are in a position where the Knicks are in, and let us not forget the square one this started at, where the Knicks were not gifted any premium lottery selection of their own from which to build off of. They did not get that benefit. They needed to do all of this essentially by outsourcing. So they've already been operating not at a deficit, but like it's already been a challenge to build it to this point. And the fact that they built it to this point without any of these guys being drafted by them is it's fucking stunning. But I digress. Like, in a sense of like, you can only keep what you need in that specific sense I think the Mikal Bridges trade made Dante DiVincenzo a luxury.
Fair. I like luxuries.
I love luxuries.
You know, I don't need an Apple Watch. I have one,
and
my phone has a clock.
Which
you know?
again goes back to they think I don't know that they think this gives them a 4% better chance to win the title, a 6% better chance, a 10% better chance. I don't know what the number is, but they think the number's higher today than it was yesterday, and that's all it comes down to.
Yeah, that's the why they did it. I'm just processing my own feelings. Do I think they have a 4% better chance? I agree that the number's probably not that high. It may be higher.
I think it's higher.
I know you do, and I guess we'll see if it's higher this season. Yeah.
TJ2K, our Infinity Gauntlet is broken, as is my heart. Well,
that's honestly one of the most bummed parts about this is that the Villanova collective that I was looking forward to watching, just the first time that the four of them shared the floor together, I was like, oh, this is cool, you know? And Benji spending the whole summer watching Villanova games.
We should have Chris Jenkins on.
We just had literally Chris Jenkins. Welcome back to the pod. Whenever. I would love to. Wish you could have told us about this. That Chris Jenkins.
Some tells me he didn't know about this one.
Well, yeah, that's where the Knicks kept that close to the vest. But yeah, the fact that the Villanova, what did Jason Concepcion call them? Voltron is now
Villanova
back
Voltron.
to a trio. You know, we'll see. If it's we'll see now with the Kentucky splashed in, you know, because now we get it's Kentucky for Kentucky, and I just realized because Randle and Cat both went to Kentucky.
I want to know whether they talked to Jalen about this, because that's the only opinion that matters.
I would assume they did, but that's a fair question to ask.
I don't know. You can tell me they did. I have no idea. But I don't know that I would assume. Anyway, okay, let's move on. Thank you, TJ2K. Hayden Freed. Instead of Jules, my cat will now just be Cat. That's great. That's a super chat of that night. That's great. That's
Hayden,
fantastic.
I love that. Next up.
Hazu, I assume for the Wolves, the second apron came into play for their decision. Do you think? Although I love Dante, he wasn't going to play crazy minutes. Randle on a contract year. I like this move. The spacing is great now. All right, so Hazu thinks positively about this.
Man, yeah, those lineups when they go to deuce at the 2, and there's the rim's just wide open.
Deuce at the 2, Andrew.
I know. I'm saying when that happens, it's space for days. Anybody that's complained about spacing on this team, now your 5 is actually a stretch 5. Now your 4 is OG Anunoby. Your 3's McKell. Man, this team.
The team's going to be nasty.
Offensively, there's such a very high ceiling. I have my reservations for Karl-Anthony Towns, but I see it. Like I do see it. What you're talking about.
So again, I have to jump in because what is the offensive set that starts the vast majority of NBA possessions? It's pick and roll.
Pick and roll,
right?
Yes.
Okay, great. So whatever you want to try to do, right? You know, if you're an opposing offense, that either Mikal Bridges or OG Anunoby is guarding your offensive initiator. Awesome. And you know that both of those guys are incredibly switchable, and there's very few centers in the league that could actually punish either of those guys on a switch. So the notion that the Knicks are just going to leave Karl-Anthony Towns out to dry, guarding the opposing teams or the opposing team's center, like I don't think he's always going to be doing that. I think they're going to hide him a lot. Now it's tough to hide 2 guys, and obviously you're always trying to hide Jalen Brunson. But, like the notion that teams are going to score easily on the Knicks with their defensive personnel at the wing is like team's gonna be a pain in the ass to play.
Again, under no circumstances am I saying they got worse.
Yeah, I know you're not. I know you're just uncertain.
Very much. It's the collective of. I was never that confident. Cat for Towns was like who's got the better player. But Cat for Randle was ever like one team is clearly getting the better player, and one team also gave up Dante DiVincenzo. So that's the calculus I'm making. The lineup we're referring to is going to be outstanding.
Or the lineup that's going to close games, which is Josh Hart.
Josh Hart. I agree. There's
You know.
if you're worried about Towns' rebounding, just throw the best rebounding guard maybe ever out
or
there.
just inject a fuck some shit up guy into your equation.
He had a comment on the live roommates show. Not Ben Stiller, John Stewart, and Jalen are making fun of him because he's like the guy that'll make the biggest three of your season, but also will throw the ball into the fourth row. And then Josh just turned to the crowd, like, "Listen, I think I play hard for you guys, right? Like I play tough. You guys give me that, great. Please allow me to do one dumb thing again. Just one." And it's like, you know, Josh, you've earned that. You play hard. You can do one dumb thing a game. We'll accept it.
He could do whatever he wants. Logan Bartlett, what's going on, Logan? Leon built this culture. He knows what it means. It's a fantastic point. There might not be 5 people in the world who know Karl-Anthony Towns better than Leon Rose. This is a great point. Not a good point. Is a great point by Logan. He knows what the culture is. He knows how Karl-Anthony Towns is going to exist in this culture. Fantastic point. Number 2, Worldwide West is best friends with Cat's dad. That I did not know. So Logan's hitting it out of the park here. Leon was his agent. Yes. Tibbs' his coach. Yes. They know what they're getting. I didn't know the thing about Cat's dad. That's pretty cool.
I assume Worldwide West is good friends with every CAA client's father, but that's just me.
It just dawned on me. John Krasinski needs to be getting a message from one of us because we're gonna.
Let's just say I've done some reaching out already, so we'll see if we can get a person in the know in Minnesota on.
He's
soon.
a friend of the pod.
Oh, I know. I'm saying, well, let's see how soon when some of us may be going away in the not too distant future. When we can fit a window in.
Listen, if I need to for John Krasinski, I'll find whatever time he has.
Got
it. Stevens Guillaume, what's going on, Stevens? I'm genuinely pissed. Like, huh? If they wanted Towns I get they wanted Towns for a minute. I feel like our depth suffered after this trade.
It's a concern I have.
What?
It's the same concern I have, but I understand the top heaviness. I understand.
You went from being too deep to being not deep enough. And the question, but this is going to sound weird because, like, I'm not concerned about their ability to find players that can give you serviceable NBA minutes. And that's why it's like even like when they made the freaking Morris signing, I'm like, that's interesting. You know, like that's a guy that could give you 5 minutes and a half if you need.
Well, he may have to.
What?
We may have to at some point this year.
He may have to, but like that's fine. And I think we've talked about how much this shows their faith in Deuce. I bet you they really like Kolek too.
Oh, we know that they're gonna. This now opens the door for him to find maybe not a regular rotation minutes, but a chance to crack situational rotation minutes, as Tibbs like to call it.
Yeah, now we're gonna have a genuine backup point guard battle on our hands between Kolek and Payne and Camp. Kevin Danishevsky, to me, this signals belief in Deuce, and I like it. Kevin spouting some knowledge here. I like it too. Deuce survived. How about that?
He did all the trades that he got thrown into this summer. He survived.
Yeah. So shout out to Sean with a W who tweeted out how Mitchell Robinson is the last man standing from the Big 15. It would not shock me if he does not end the season with
also, if like the final version of this trade hasn't been reported yet.
It has not been reported yet.
He may not survive this trade.
But Deuce being
also, you called him the last man standing. I don't think he's standing much at the moment.
That's terrible.
Had to be said. Get well soon, Mitch. Please.
Get well soon. But Deuce is like the last of like the young guys. Right? I know like Deuce is not that much younger than Mitch. Aren't probably around the same age. But yeah, he's the last one. All right. Hush Zoo. Oh wait, did we get that one? Yeah.
Oh no.
No, we didn't.
Yeah. Sorry.
Hush Zoo. I can't believe it's here now, guys. The Knicks have fully went all in. This is real. We are in championship contention for the next 3-4 years. Very excited. Interesting thing. We haven't read the full tweet from Ian Begley, but the Knicks are sending out, their messaging after this trade, obviously. And one of Ian's tweets was something about. By the way, congratulations to Ian. He's the first one who reported that the trade was done.
Yes, he was.
So that's a pretty nice feather in the old cap. Good job by you. Somewhere in one of his tweets was something along the lines of. The Knicks think they got something here now for the next, whatever it is, 3-4 years. Like, it is in the second apron era, it is incredibly, incredibly difficult to keep a team together for that long. And like, this is still a sport where continuity pays off. So again, we all want the Knicks to win the championship this year. I think the Knicks can win the championship this year. I'm not sure if they'll be my pick, although I'll think about it a lot harder than I would have before this trade. They don't have to win it this year or even next year. Like, this is a genuine window. Now, you never know how long they're going to stay open, but they've given themselves a real opportunity here. Dominic Ambrose. The thing we were told made the most sense and is probably happened. I am neither excited or upset, just kind of stunned. Yeah. That was my initial reaction. I was stunned. Armand Bernajaj. Can we just take into effect that people who come to the Knicks get better? Let's see how it turns out. Well,
that's a good point.
The Wolves, when Tibbs was there, I don't want to say they were a disaster, but like, I don't know. I think Towns' chances for success under Tibbs now are better than they were when he was with Minnesota.
He was out of position, if you want to call it. He was doing two jobs, one of which he wasn't very good at. So,
well, don't forget they had a different Twin Towers in Minnesota. They had him and Taj.
Taj Gibson. Yes.
Now
look, the confidence I have in this working is that Cat, the best, I'd argue the best we've ever seen him is when he made All-NBA as a center under Tibbs after they traded Jimmy Butler. So
the when that team was healthy, when it was oh my God, I forgot Jeff Teague. When it was Jeff Teague, Andrew Wiggins, Jimmy Butler, Taj Gibson, and Cat, that team was gangbusters. And then Jimmy got injured at the end of that season, and they that team was third in the West for most of that year, and then they fell to 8th at the very end. And then it just kind of all came apart. But that team was legit. Thanks, Armin. Eric Bacorn, trade grade F. This is horrible. I can't believe we got so much worse. If this isn't
serious, great. If this is serious, I'm sorry.
No, it's definitely serious.
I just don't know when all caps show up how serious that is or not.
I think it's serious. You know what is a shame? And I think our the guy I admire, at least, Sean Fennessy, tweeted this out. I just want to read Zach Lowe's thoughts on this trade.
Yeah, there's one person I want right now. I'd love to get Zach. You know who I can't wait to hear from?
Who?
Benji Ritholtz, who is on Sabbath at the moment and has no idea any of this happened.
That's right.
I love
he's going to get the newspaper in the morning,
though. So the breaking news would have to be in the morning, but knowing Benji, he usually turns his phone on and reacts sometime Saturday night to the news.
Yeah.
You know, that's how all the great Knicks things, like the Quickly trade, the Quickly RJ trade, you know, all these things that have happened on Friday night, we then wait for Benji's reaction when sundown happens. So
this is good. Okay, speaking of Mr. Krasinski, a constant drumbeat throughout the last year. Plus, the Knicks wanted Cat. The Knicks wanted Cat. The Knicks wanted Cat. Eerily similar to the drumbeat in Minnesota when the Wolves coveted D'Angelo Russell. It was constant until they got him. The common thread: Gerson Rosas. Well, we haven't mentioned Gerson Rosas' name. Gerson Rosas obviously is the Knicks. I think is he the GM at the moment? officially, or maybe not officially the GM, but whatever. He's probably the de facto GM. Who they got from Minnesota. He was there. He didn't draft Towns, but he was in Minnesota for a while and left under some not so great circumstances. He's been with the Knicks now for a couple of years. If this is coming from Krasinski, like you could take it to the bank. He's a
senior vice president of basketball operations.
There you go.
Is his title, by the way.
The one thing I will say is, like, for as much as I'm sure Leon will deferred to Gerson on the basketball side of this, I don't think I would be shocked if they did the trade without Tibbs' blessing, number one, and two, the culture part of it that Logan brought up earlier. Like, Leon would not do this if he had doubts about whether Cat would be okay from a culture standpoint, which again brings me back to did they ask Jalen Brunson about the trade?
Man, Sean with the W always throws some perspective into it that makes me think deeper. He's got a picture of Jaime Jaquez taking a charge from Julius Randle, and he quote tweeted his tweet from when he sent that out. If you told me this was the last time I would see Julius Randle in orange and blue, was him walking off with a dislocated shoulder at the end of what was a party on a Saturday after a blowout win over the Heat. That's the last time we'll see Julius Randle in a Knick uniform, at least for now. Yeah.
It's unfair. And I think until the Knicks win if they win a championship, God willing, until that day comes, there will always be a segment of the fan base who wonders whether a healthy version of last year's team could have won it all. And you know what? I don't think that's ridiculous.
That's how good I thought they were, especially in January. With the way Hartenstein was playing, like,
I didn't believe it in January, but like seeing how close Boston came to losing so many games against Indiana and how they did not come up clutch in clutch situations, and then like, okay, when you get to the finals, who's there? Is Dallas. Like, okay, Dallas is really good, best player in the series, the whole thing. Yeah, we'll always wonder. Frank Miranda, what's going on, Frank? I actually forgot what Frank's take on Cat is, so this will be a learning experience for me. What's up, Mac? It's your boy Frank from Patreon. On a town hall we had over the summer, I mentioned that I did not think Dante would be happy playing under 30 minutes and not starting. I think this is not being discussed enough. We touched on it. It probably isn't being discussed enough. And again, always listen to Ian Begley. I've referenced this tweet in a newsletter. Or not a tweet. Sorry, it wasn't a tweet. It was when I was on playback with him. And it was early in the summer. And he asked me.
You were on the putback with him, not playback.
Playback. Putback. Yeah. It's late. I was on the putback, and he pitched a question to me about the team, and he prefaced it with like, it was something along the lines of like, Dante and Josh both played big roles last year. Now they're going to the bench. How they going to feel about that? Like, and I forget what even the question was, but like, Ian brought that up then. I wonder if this isn't something that has been simmering for a bit. Do I think Dante DiVincenzo went into the front office and like demanded a trade? No, of course not. But I also wonder, was there some reading of the writing on the wall here? I don't know. I'm gonna miss the hell out of Dante. That guy was so much fun to watch. I really, really loved watching him play.
Appreciate the shirt.
Without question, my favorite one-year Knick ever. I'm not old enough to remember Xavier, the X-Man, Xavier McDaniel. But Easily.
There's a draft.
Best 1 year Knicks ever.
Tune in, everybody. We're drafting the best 1 year Knicks ever.
Marcus Morris would get taken early in that draft.
Now he's a 2 year Knick.
Oh, that's right.
Next
Well,
up.
not yet. He is.
Not yet. That's right. He's got to make the
Yeah, he's
team.
gotta make the
So
team.
let's hope he doesn't, so that way he can qualify for the draft.
Yeah. Hutch Sue. I'll say it. We got better. Look, I don't think that's a hot take. I really don't. I don't think it's a hot take. Cat is an absurd offensive talent for his size. I don't care if this is a hot take. Again, don't think it is. Randle hasn't played a good playoff series for us. Yeah, I mean, he hasn't been healthy, and I don't hold the first playoff series against him. The lights got to him a little bit. Atlanta had time to prepare, and it showed. And Julius just didn't have his best series, and since then he's been hurt. I am going to be as fascinated to track his career now as I was when he was still here. I'm very, very curious. Like, if he stays on Minnesota, like, how is he like their number 2? I mean, ostensibly right now he is, right?
Yeah, it'd have to be.
But is he a true number 2, or is he like?
Well, so that's the we really talked about the Minnesota angle of this. If they keep Julius, and it's like what made his fit at least last year work so well is that he was less of a playmaker and more of a floor spacer. So when they would go to Anthony Edwards and Mike Conley to run the offense through their 2 guards, that was fine. And Cat, while he'd get some playmaking duties with the second unit, largely in crunch time, they were running the offense through Ant, and then they would bring him in pick and rolls. And like we saw the Naz Reid lineups when he would replace Gobert in certain situations. But for the most part, Cat wasn't asked to be a playmaker. And now he comes to the Knicks, where the argument everybody was making was that Julius is coming back will help the Knicks because he's a secondary playmaker. And now he's coming here to be a floor spacing 5, which may actually elevate their ceiling even more so if Brunson could take that toll going forward.
You want a hot take?
Here.
Julius Randle and Dante DiVincenzo are going to be competing to see who closes games for the Timberwolves. If you believe that they would still feel more comfortable with Mike Conley on the floor alongside Anthony Edwards rather than putting the offense completely and totally in the hands of Anthony Edwards down the stretch of games, then you think Conley's out there in addition to Edwards, McDaniels, and Gobert. Only one spot left.
Be funny if they don't play Gobert and then Randle has to play the 5 there too.
That ain't happening.
Not happening. I just said it'd be funny.
OG team. Is this 2 birds with 1 stone trade? Center position unknown, and extending Randle wasn't in their plans. Cat fills in both of those. I think that this is like, remember the scene in Elf where they have the snowball fight? There are so many stones being thrown, like with so many birds flying around. Like everybody's trying to do what they can. Yeah, essentially, I do think it comes to it's 2 birds with 1 stone. That's what the vision is. I don't know if it's going to work. But the vision is absolutely, we needed to consolidate. We needed to figure out the Randle contract situation. We needed an upgrade somewhere on the roster. Somewhere we needed and that's ultimately what it comes down to. They felt they needed an upgrade. So where are you going to upgrade? Like you're out of spots. And this was the easiest opportunity for them to upgrade. You know what I bet we're going to hear from at least one wonky Cat person. If we haven't already, I haven't checked Twitter for I don't want to say wonky because these people I respect them immensely. So, and I agree with them, but like, I bet you there's going to be some takes being like, did the Knicks really have to give up a 1st-round pick in this trade? And you know what? Not completely unfair, because you had a contract in Karl-Anthony Towns that not untradeable. That's completely the wrong word, but like, what is out there where you're getting value for a guy making this much money in this apron era? Not a lot of trades, right? So you got Randle, fine. You got DiVincenzo. Okay, now you did really well. You got a replacement, again, ostensibly for Cat, and you got a major rotation piece and a guy who might close games for you. That should be enough, right? And they got a pick. They did well.
That pick's never going to be in the first round.
Look, but you say that. Sitting here tonight, I'll tell you this: I would have much rather have sent the Washington pick.
I don't think that pick's ever going to be in the first.
No,
round.
that is not conveying. The Pistons pick at least has a chance. Although, if you want to go really galaxy brain, truly galaxy brain, that Washington pick has a decent chance to be the first pick in the second round. If it doesn't convey, the year it doesn't convey as a first, has a pretty good chance to be the first pick in the second round. And even the year after that might have the second.
And you remember when the Knicks had a pick like that? They traded it for OG Anunoby. So that's the galaxy brain of Brock Aller.
But specifically in the context of a team that is battling against aprons to get premiums, like 2 premium second round selections, as opposed to like the 11th pick in the draft. Like, again, I think you're always going to want the lottery pick, but again, it's a little too galaxy brain. Okay,
maybe in 2027 that pick conveys in the first. Maybe in 20, because it's 1 through 9 protected in 2027. Maybe by then the Pistons have turned it around.
That's the reason why I always have thought the Pistons pick was a value pick. I think at some point you're going to get like the 11th, 12th pick in the draft from that pick.
Maybe.
Will Oliver, this Friday night Knicks hits differently. Wow. Yeah, this is a memorable one. This is a memorable one for sure. Thanks, Will. Anthony Sixto, what's going on, Anthony? I'm stressed. I see how this is a fit on offense in the immediate future, but I don't know the Cat is better all around than peak Julius Randle. Hoping Tibbs can teach Cat some toughness. # ride with Randle, no more. I think if you're going to talk about peak Julius Randle, it's only fair to talk about peak Karl-Anthony Towns. And it's easy for us to dismiss that concept, but I think it's funny. Knicks fans are very against this trade. I think around the league, I think a lot of people are going to, maybe not NBA, like real inside, like people who know what they're talking about are going to be able to dissect it and be like, this is a risky move for the Knicks. It is. I think the casual take will be like, hold on, the Knicks got Karl-Anthony Towns for Julius Randle. I think you're going to hear a lot of people say that. Now, we don't view that here because we think the best of Julius Randle, and we've seen Julius Randle at his best, including when he put up 57 on Karl-Anthony Towns and the Minnesota Timberwolves when he was absolutely unconscious. I think we're doing a little bit of a disservice to not consider how good Karl-Anthony Towns could be when Karl-Anthony Towns is at his best. Because that dude is a fucking monster. Sometimes. Not all the time. John Leary, don't love it. JR, Cat have similar EPMs, give up a sniper in Dante, plus the Detroit pick. Paid a ton in both trades. JB, Deuce, MB, OG, Cat, 6 starting lineup, though. Hope we get a parade. It's fair. I think there are some analytics that don't love Cat. It's very fair. I think, and there are reasons for that. You could also argue that he has not been in an ideal situation really at any point in his career up until now, because when has there really been the defensive infrastructure there until after the Rudy Gobert trade, which is when he was not utilized as well as he could be on offense?
That's the thing, is the answer is when the team he was just on, he was surrounded by a ton of defensive talent, but they made him play out of position. Now he's going to his natural 5 playing. I mean, look, whether it's Deuce, Bridges, and Anunoby, or Hart, Bridges, and Anunoby, he's going to be surrounded with some great perimeter defenders. So, and look, there will be the occasional Mitch and Cat lineups that we see if against bigger teams. But yeah, look, I go back to my the comedy I found in that now Precious at the 4 is like in play because you play him next to Cat, and as long as Josh Hart's not on the floor, that team could still have decent spacing, and you have Precious's defensive upside. You know,
Precious is going to play a lot of minutes for this
he
season.
is. He played a
One
lot of
way or
minutes
another.
last year. Who knew? And that's the thing. Like him at the 4 is now no longer as
Yeah.
crazy because you're not putting someone in the dunker spot. Now Precious can occupy it in certain situations.
Yes, but again, that takes away some of the again, what makes Towns so dangerous is for it to be an open floor, is the high pick and roll surrounded by shooting.
I'm talking about like against second units. I'm not saying
Yeah,
that
no. Well,
I'm saying now if you're in a pinch and you wanted to go to Precious at the 4, it's not as absurd, especially if you don't put Josh Hart out there. You put Precious out there with 4 shooters. It's no longer they're sagging off of Precious. Well, no, he just guard the other team's center.
Yep. There's a lot of ways listen. They got
I think
dinner.
I'm coming around on this trade, John. I think that's where I am. The more I'm thinking about it, I'm coming around on this trade.
The versatility that they've gained is immense. Immense. They have I'm not going to sit here and say they become the most versatile team in the league because Boston exists and probably throw OKC in there too. I mean, they're right there though.
Yeah.
And what do you know? Those should be your 3 championship favorites. Wilton Moran, super chat mainly to show my appreciation for helping us process this madness. Very sad to see Devo go. In Leon, we trust, though, ride or die. Wilton, it's funny how often you kind of streamline your thoughts to match mine exactly. Also sad to see Dante go. Thank you.
I am going to check the championship odds as you say that.
I would be surprised if they're updated already, but I'd be curious. Also, I need a pee break soon, so you're up for a super chat pretty soon. Brian Valderrama, to all the Randle haters, Cat is a head case too. Cat's, listen, can't put your head in the sand about what Cat is. He is, I don't want to say he's a head case, but like, let me say this for Julius. For as much as Julius has done some things that have been frustrating in terms of, I don't want to say off-court stuff, but like the thumbs down, obviously, we'll always remember that. And for as much as there is look, let's again call a spade a spade. The lack of effort. Oh my God, I feel so bad, Andrew. There's a reader, Davey, to the KFS newsletter, who asked me like a month ago to do a newsletter on Julius Randle's screening and how important it was going to be with the potentially small ball lineup. And like, he's not a very good screener. So is that going to be an issue? I went like a week and a half ago and I watched basically all the offensive possessions in January where Randle was on the floor. Downloaded 15 or so clips of Julius setting what we'll politely call screens. He's not a very good screener. And I had this, and I was going to polish off the newsletter this weekend, like when I had some spare time here and there. That newsletter's never going to see the light of day. So time well spent, obviously. Julius had a lot of faults of his own. Towns, the way he talks about himself, kind of makes my stomach churn sometimes. I'm gonna have to adjust to that. And then that's not even considering the stuff that he does on the court with the truly, truly maddening fouls that just are like, what are you doing? And then on top of that, like the dribbling into nowhere and like the complete lack of game situation awareness, like all of it's on the table. He is as maddening a star player as there is in the league. And now he's the Knicks, and they have to figure out how to mitigate all that stuff. It's a challenge. Hush Zoo. If the Knicks somehow get Nick Richards from the 3-team deal with the Hornets, this is a 10 out of 10 trade. I can't even go there, and I'm a fan of the trade. A true Leon masterclass. I like that you're high on it, Hush.
As am I.
Jordan Miller. Sucks to lose Dante, but overall, pretty happy. I think having a stretch 5 will be huge for this team, and I'm sure OG plus McCall will make up for his defense. I mean, that's the hope. That's the hope, Jordan. Tibbs gonna have his work cut out for him. That's all I'll say. 221 B Baker. Cat better ball in the playoffs with his soft behind.
Jeez.
I gotta pee. Of all the players.
Oh no.
Cat, Andrew.
Uh-huh.
Can you imagine if they play Philly again?
And he balls in the playoff with his soft behind.
I just Cat and Embiid.
Oh yeah, that's a thing. That's right.
A thing.
That's a thing. Oh, I like Cat even more now.
Do
He
your
also
homework,
hates
kid.
Joel Embiid. Go ahead.
I'll be back in 30 seconds.
Sounds good. Thank you, 21 B-ball B breaker. Next up, Mr. Danishevsky. Last piece of this gonna be sign and trading trade player taxpayer mid-level exception guy. Asked and answered. No, can't do that. Hush Zoo. I will say I am forever grateful for Randle. Pulled this team together during a horrible time in the world. A true delight to watch. Once a Knick, always a Knick. Thank you, Julius Randle 30. Cosign. Obviously, we've spoken to it tonight. Once a Knick, always a Knick. Thank you for the memories, Julius Randle. Anthony Sixto. JR not extending. Forced to play small ball 5 when he's looking to get his last big payday. Any chance talks going sideways led to this? Hashtag cart with cat. That is interesting. I will come back to your questions. I think it's a good one, Anthony. So stay tuned. CC Kirby, I'm with you, Macri. I developed a big attachment to Dante during the season. Became a playoff hero in one season here. That loss stings me. Well, John's not here to read this, CC Kirby, but I'll relay the message, and I'm sure he feels the same way. As you said, you're with him. So obviously he feels the same way. Actually, I see John about to sit down, so we'll go ahead and get his response to your comment, CC Kirby. While we're at it, Hush Zoo. Although I can't believe Leon really matched the Celtics. Haha.
Hush Zoo's on one tonight. He
loves this trade. I'd love to see someone that loves something. So
no, I like it.
Good for you, Hush. By the way, a couple for you.
CC Kirby, I'm with you, Macri. I developed a big attachment to Dante during the season. Became a playoff hero in one season here. That's the loss that stings me. Yeah, and I feel bad saying it because, again, Julius was here for 5 years. Dante was here for 1. And Julius meant a lot more to this franchise than Dante did. That's not in dispute. It's not close. But that was my favorite Knick team. And I want to say specifically the post-January 27th team, which was like barely more than a 500 team. It's my favorite Knick team I've ever watched. A team has never hit me emotionally like that team did. And he was a massive part of that. And then for him to, game 2 against Philly.
Thanks for the shirt. You know, that shirt now has 3 people's names on it, and 2 of them no longer play for the Knicks.
It's wild.
Yeah. Anyway, one more from Anthony Sixto that you missed.
JR not extending, forced to play small ball 5 when he's looking to get his last big payday. Any chance talks going sideways led to this? Hashtag cart with cat. Yeah, we've touched on that before. I'm just going to read Ramona Shelburne, friend of the pod. Actually, no, has she been on the pod?
She's
No.
never been on the pod.
I've interviewed her, and I don't know what the hell that interview appeared in, but she's awesome. Anyway, from Ramona Shelburne, Julius Randle has spent the summer rehabilitating his season-ending shoulder surgery. He and the Knicks had not made progress on a contract extension this summer, sources said, essentially signaling the Knicks' willingness to trade him. I wonder what they offered. Or if they offered anything that didn't involve him picking up his option. I bet you that's what it was. I bet you they drew the line at we'll talk to you if you pick up the option, then we could have conversations. But without you picking up the option, there is no conversation to be had, because unless you are at the 30 point, I think it was 30.5 or 30.9 or whatever, that 30 point something $1 million number for 25-26, then we're risking second apron stuff, and we're not going into the second apron for you. So I bet you that's how those talks went. Anyway, talks between the teams, meaning New York and Minnesota, had taken place all summer, but picked up steam in the last few days when Charlotte was brought in as a third team. I am thinking of a conversation we had at Summer League, Andrew, about Karl-Anthony Towns and the Knicks.
What conversation was that?
You don't remember?
Remind me. Yes, I've had a lot of conversations about Cat.
It was in that shitty hotel you were staying in where we recorded a podcast.
Yes, the Rio. Oh yeah, the pod with Fred. Okay. Yes. I'm
not revealing who that conversation was with, of course. But like, yeah, no, we heard it.
Said it, and you didn't hear it, but yes,
we. I'm being facetious. That was what was it? What was it? June or July? Whatever it was, 13th, 14th. You know.
Yeah, so it was like mid-July. That's how far back I've. Hey, look, CP deserves the credit because he said he reported it on Knicks Fan TV as well.
Absolutely. CP actually gets the biggest tip of the cap.
He like heard it first. Yeah.
Yeah.
We just to not to be insider guy, but John can attest to this too. Like this was the chatter at Summer League, like the scuttlebutt that like the Knicks are not done. The Randle extension is a thing. And then like Jalen Brunson had just extended. And then it was like, all right, what's next with Julius? Well, they might trade him is what's next for Julius. And, well, here we are. Never did anything about Dante, though. That is the most shocking part of all of this.
No. Which is, again, that's the biggest stunner by far for me.
Yeah.
Okay. Jacob Slavitt, what's going on, Jacob? Love or hate Cat, Leon is doing the thing. We are witnessing the savviest era of Knicks basketball to date. Elite franchise roster building. Yeah, we'll see. We'll see. This is going to be again. The McCall trade was controversial. The Bridges trade was controversial. Giving OG Anunoby $220 million or whatever they gave him was controversial. Or at least like trading it for him, knowing you'd have to give him that kind of payday. That was controversial. And now this. It's but again, like if you zoom out, right? If you zoom out, they traded a guy who, again, nobody really thought that he was in that upper tier of player, right? Where I know people are sick of hearing me refer to Zach Lowe, but like Lowe kind of intimated that like the Randle salary slot was kind of more important than Randle himself, or as important as Randle himself, that's saying something. And a guy that they got for under the mid-level exception a year ago. Now, DiVincenzo, I think, rocketed in value over the last year, but this team continues to flip, buy houses at a low cost, fix them up and flip them. And they're really good at it. Rob DeLuzma. I love you, beautiful KFS fools, so freaking much. Well, we love you too, Rob. Thank you. Josh Kalu. If you look at Cat's numbers pre-Gobert trade, maybe we will get back to that version of him. I think offensively, and I'm not certainly the first person to say this, he has had to sacrifice a lot since Gobert came. Because anytime he's on the floor with Gobert, he doesn't get to do the things that he's best at, Yeah, he's a great shooter, but like you don't want him just being spot up guy. That's not why you're paying him $50 million a year. You want him to be the sort of all-around impact player on the offensive end. And I think that was challenging at times.
Now, I don't mean to box score scout, but I'm staring at these effective field goal percentages pre-Gobert trade.
Fake numbers.
Yeah. 59.1, 60% in 1920. Only 35 games during the COVID shortened season. But
He's not lying when he says he's the greatest shooting big man ever. Like the numbers are there to at least make it an argument.
41% on 8 attempts in 2020.
It's volume.
Yeah. Well, Dante's volume is gone. Now Cat can just take 16 threes a game.
I just don't know how anyone's supposed to guard this team.
Yeah.
Truly. Brandon Muniz. I don't know how to feel about this. Not Dante. Is there more coming? Well, yes, there is more coming, but I have at this point, the most interesting part of it is
this. Just real quick, the super chat came in 2.5 hours ago. So at that point, much more was still to come. Is there more coming?
We're a little behind.
Yes, the Charlotte Hornets got involved. Okay, Brandon, that's what happened.
I'm interested to see, to make the money work, are the Knicks going to take back salary from the Hornets, or is there going to be a fourth team that gets involved that has to take on some salary? Whereas Charlotte sends outgoing money to a team with a trade exception that can intake something. The complicating part there is that, well, one, the Knicks don't get another player. Two, the Hornets are going to want something for getting involved here, and we still haven't heard what the Hornets are going to get out of all this, because they're getting something. And three, if you did get another team involved purely for the express purpose of taking on salary, that team's going to want something too. And this has been reported as a 3-team trade. I don't think it's going to be more than that. So again, I don't know how it's going to wind up. But Daniel Soto, what's going on? Daniel, first time, long time. Well, thanks for joining us, man. My heart hurts, but my head knows this is a great trade if you're not resigning Randle anyway. That's the part that we haven't really talked about. Okay, they can't come to an agreement on a contract extension with Julius Randle, and they know they're not going to come to a contract extension with Julius Randle this year. What happens next summer? There's not a great answer to that question, because, like, what does a contract standoff with Julius Randle look like next July? Do we know the answer to that question? Are we sure that, like, Randle wouldn't have looked at that situation and then found another suitor, and then that suitor would be like, yeah, we'll pay you $40 million a year, but we're just not giving up anything for you, or giving up much for you. And then would the Knicks be in a position where it's like, all right, well, we have to accept whatever this team is like? It's like the DeRozan situation. And I wonder, we already compared Julius Randle to DeMar DeRozan once tonight. I mean, and the Knicks are run much better than the Bulls, evidenced by the fact that they traded Julius Randle and didn't let this get to sign and trade territory. But, like, I wonder if the DeRozan thing impacted them even a little bit, seeing how little, like, what the Bulls were left with. And, like, DeRozan and Randle, very comparable in terms of value around the league, in terms of, like, clearly talented players, bucket getters, the whole thing, and yet not a whole lot of interest in either guy. Why? Well, look at their overall games and how they fit in with contenders. And that's why you have a team like the Kings making the play for DeRozan. Anyway. Okay. AJ Montalvo. Trade definitely has the Celtics in mind. It has to. The matchup idea and formula they set out with 5-out center, I think, made this trade happen. Yes, the big difference, and it's a massive one, and it's going to be on Tom Thibodeau to figure out. Kristaps Porzingis is one of the best drop centers in the league. Elite drop center. And if you play Horford, you could switch. Towns, it's more of they've done a lot of hedging and hedge and recover and stuff like that. So that's not something the Knicks have traditionally employed. So what does the defense look like with Towns? That's the question. Thanks, AJ. Ed Flood, this is a Mitch for Richards deal to make the money work. It might be. It might be. If you told me that's, but again, not straight up. It can't be because the money doesn't work. Can't do 14 for 5. You gotta be something else. Now we've already heard Jeffries, but that's more money coming to Charlotte. So there has to, like, again, even if the Knicks get the salary up there, you still have to have, you can't have a cushion of more than $7.5 million. I don't know what I don't know what the math is gonna look like. Thank you, Ed. Giovanni Mistretta. This feels right on paper, wrong on the court. Well, if it's wrong on the court, then it's not right on paper. Yeah. I'm clearly a bigger fan of it on the court than a lot of other folks are, but reasonable minds could differ. Thanks, Giovanni. Christopher Webb. I think this all goes back to the 2023 playoff loss against Miami. Everyone who disappeared in that series and let the Knicks down is now gone.
Oh, dear. Yeah, wrong. I mean, Josh Hart kind of disappeared that series, but did hit some shots in game 2. Randle had 2 good counting stats games. RJ had 1 bad game. Well, 2 bad games, but everybody had a bad game 3 that series. So I don't know how fair that is, but
I mean, who came out smelling like roses of that series other than Jalen?
like roses, nobody. Maybe like a daffodil from the playoffs
Josh
in general. Josh Hart and RJ. There was a playoff RJ conversation. I will quote John Macri if you'd like me to, but
you don't have to. He's not worth quoting.
No, you said at the end of that series, I think the Knicks have a 16-game player in RJ Barrett.
Yeah, unfortunately, one of those games was not Game 7 when he went.
It was not. It was or Game 6. You mean Game 6? You mean yes?
Game 6
in Miami. Yeah. Same thing for Julius. The 3 for 14.
Look. Nobody needs to report this. What I'm going to say. If the Knicks were unwilling to give Julius Randle, who has made multiple All-NBA teams and 3 All-Star teams, if they were unwilling to make him even one of the 50th highest paid players in the league, which, again, read between the lines, they were unable to make any progress on extension talks this summer. Do the math.
Yeah.
What do you think their offer was? If they were unwilling to do that, then that tells you exactly what they thought about his ability to be a significant contributor in a playoff series. This is the reality. Mr. Knicks 101. Spot on analysis regarding Mitch. Guy is limited. Yeah, I mean, this, I haven't mentioned Mitch much other than we don't know if he's going to be in this trade.
I think that's why it's tough to mention him because we don't know if we're eulogizing him tonight too.
But this trade, not any way you cut it, whether he's in the trade or not exactly a vote of confidence in Mitch.
Next up,
Hush Zoo. I could see Precious start with Cat over Hart starting. Wouldn't shock me.
Which gives you Precious with 4 shooters. It's no longer a crazy idea. With him at the 4, technically at the 5.
He's a good defender.
He is very good defender.
And my God, they would be massive. The size of that team. Precious at the 4, OG at the 3, and Josh Hart, or no, sorry, Mikal Bridges at the 2.
Mm-hmm.
And then it keeps Deuce and Josh off the bench.
I wonder if that's what they do opening night. Actually, when I think about it, Tibbs might do that. That lineup won't close, but that might be what he starts on opening night.
It's because it's Boston, though.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Look, a new roster just got assembled hours ago. I'm sure Tibbs is in the inception of figuring out what to do next. But
we'll give you one guess where he is right now. Johnny BK, high risk of re-injury for Julius, had to be a factor in this. Again, lots of birds, lots of stones throwing back and forth here. Yeah, it was a factor, of course. Cat is more efficient and more tradable. Losing DiVincenzo was a gut punch. Love you guys. Thank you so much.
You have Tibbs in Terrytown right now?
Come on, man.
You want to know where he was before the trade?
Where?
Terrytown, probably.
Is Cat more tradable? I mean, it's 3 years at $50 million a year. That's a big matzo ball.
Depends for who.
Knicks kept that 2030 pick swap.
They sure did. And what that coveted Washington second
Coveted
that's going to be. Yes, as we discussed earlier.
Yeah. Anyway, all right. Thanks, Johnny BK. Yeah, no, I think I factored in. Greg B. Excuse me. The Knicks can get all-star offense from the 5. That's a big deal. Pretty big trade-off, though, losing playmaking from the 4 and a huge three-point threat in DiVincenzo. I look at it. I'm not disagreeing with you, but here's the beauty. The Knicks could play Cat at the 5 and then slide OG Anunoby right over to the 4. And then slide Mikal Bridges right over to the 3. Or Josh Hart at the 3, Mikal at the 2. Like, any way you cut it, they have ways to replace what they have lost. Shervin Mobasheri. iHeart fucked it up. The implication is that if iHeart did not leave, they would not have done this.
No, because they would have had a center. It's all his fault. Isaiah Hart. How dare you, Isaiah Hartenstein, take so much more money than the Knicks could have offered you?
I'm just thinking. Do they
still do this anyway? Even if they have iHeart, the need for a center is no longer in play.
Here's the thing. The John Krasinski, and hopefully we get John on in the coming days to talk to him.
We've texted. That's a couple weeks conversation.
Okay.
Now Minnesota's coming here in a couple weeks, so that's
perfect.
That's in play. That's
Great.
what I've asked for.
Wonderful. When we talk to him, I want to ask him about his tweet that this has been something the Knicks have wanted for a year. We could all be very certain the Knicks wanted Isaiah Hartenstein back. So I'm not sure that Hartenstein leaving actually had an impact on this. It did. I'm sure it did have an impact, but a significant impact. Like, if they could have made the money work, which again, therein calls the question of, do they actually want to play Cat at the 5?
In this situation, I think they do, but I get why you're asking this.
Yeah,
because I wonder if iHeart's here, do they just extend Randle, and then there's your salary slot for the potential Giannis pipe dream a year from now?
They're not making moves to try to get Giannis. That the fact that he might wind up, whatever. That we don't have to talk about this. I don't think there's any universe where they were extending Julius Randle.
Any universe? Okay.
No.
Okay.
Not what they were offering. Sam Garcia's dad, what's going on? Can't believe Devo is going, but the Knicks don't just trade a piece like Devo for a need, like a center. The Knicks need to get the best player in the trade. Well, they got the best. That's the other thing. Like, they got the best player in the trade. Like,
did they?
Yeah, they did. Come on. Stop.
John, the whole point that I've been saying tonight is I'm not sure that they got the best player in the trade. I think Randle does some really great things. I think Cat does some really great things.
Go look at the numbers again.
I'm not box score scouting. I'm telling you what I have seen over the years watching both of them play. DJ agrees. I'm like, come on. This is a conversation we've had for years. When the Cat conversation was originally brought up, we were frustrated after a bad Julius Randle game. I know what the effective field goal percentage is. I also know what the playmaking looks like. He's going to be in a different role this year. He's going to be playing a different position than what the Knicks needed, because they now have options at the 4.
You're not wrong.
You don't agree. Cat was significantly better, and the Knicks got the best player in the trade.
I think the Knicks got the best player in the trade.
Gotta love that effective field goal percentage.
This guy averaged 5 assists 2 years ago. Like, this guy's he's a wildly effective offensive player when he has his head on straight.
Mhm.
Okay, thanks, Ray.
One more from Ray.
Cat and Bridges were inevitable. So what are we missing to be a true contender? I think they've made. You know what? The only nice thing I'll say is again, you're always looking for how you can improve. What are the opportunities out there, that allow you to improve? This opens up, well, actually, shit. No, never mind.
Looking at
What?
I was wondering what you were looking at. Cat averaging 5 assists. He averaged 4.8 the year that he played 30 games, and most of them without Gobert because they played him at the 5.
Okay.
This is a 3 assists a year ago.
Yeah.
He's not that much of a playmaker. Whereas with Randle, you were operating as a hub.
I don't think he was tasked with being, because he was behind, because you had Connolly and you had Anthony Edwards last year.
You had other options. I agree.
Yeah. They will continue to have opportunities to improve this team, using exceptions. That's the big one. I got excited for a second. I'm like, oh wait, they still have their exception this year. Except then I remembered that there are no good players to spend it on. Again, it's late. Thank you, Ray. CJ Cervantes, who needs dogs when you've got a cat? It's not as good as the Jules cat rename bit, but this is that was good. Jason M, what's going on, Jason? I was waiting to hear from you. Don't love the trade, not a cat guy, but he can prove me wrong. Leon Rose is ruthless. Got to give him credit for taking risk. Gerson Rosas loves cat. Yes, he does. You got that right. Look, there's been a rumor since Leon Rose took over. He talk about being a shrewd businessman. Hush Zoo. This offense will be so much fun, man. I can't wait. Let's go Knicks. I'm excited for the offense. I'm so excited for this offense. I can't wait for the first time they play some shitty team and just go up 45 to 28 in the first quarter. They did that last year, in fairness, with Julius. But I think it's gonna when it hums, man, it's gonna look good.
They did that to the Nuggets last year. They did that to the 76ers last year.
They did?
Yeah.
Two pretty good teams.
Didn't Julius have an insane New Year's Eve game against Cat and the Timberwolves last year? Yes, he did.
Year's day.
What did I say, Eve?
You said Eve.
Yeah, that time was a blur. We were hiring HR at the time.
I don't know what you're talking about.
I don't know either. He's fine.
Alex. Okay, here we go. This is the best day of my life. I never have to read another Macri newsletter with mock cat trades. How soon can we flip cat for Giannis? Hashtag the chip. To add injury to insult to injury, he steals Robert Cross's hashtag at the end. I know Robert is alive because I saw he DM me. I think he's not too happy right now.
Interesting. Yeah. Speaking of
busy,
reactions to
no. Busy. Not Julius. Why? Oh God, why? The town halls on Monday is gonna be interesting. Shout out to all of our KFS patrons. If you too would like to sign up for the Knicks Film School Patreon, feel free to go to patreon.com and search up Knicks Film School. You could join any of our tiers, including our Monroe tier, in which you get to come and chat it up with us at a town hall every month, in which many things get said.
Many things do get said, like this other thing from Busy.
Busy. The way he guarded Joker, we just had to go get him. Listen, man. He was good in that series. He did his job.
Did his job, exactly. Speaking of things said at the town hall.
Kevin Danishevsky. Funny component to this offseason is that they traded for a guy they tanked for and just passed on. Oh, traded for a guy they tanked for in Cat and then traded for a guy they just passed on in Mikal Bridges. Jeremy's in Crazy Town. Love you. Heart starts night one.
I don't think that's
maybe.
Crazy.
I don't. Could he might? We'll see. Puneeth Sharma, what's going on, Puneeth? 12 years ago, the Knicks traded for a number 1 overall pick in Andrea Bargnani. Oh my God, we're not going here, are we? After getting second in the East and getting eliminated in the second round. Eerie. No, it's not. Andrea Bargnani was a bust.
Here's what I'll say: as my hesitations about Karl-Anthony Towns, right? Like I'm the cold water guy tonight.
Yeah,
he's better than Andrea Bargnani. I'll go out on that limb.
That team, that organization was so dysfunctional. Now, look, you want to be glass half empty. Why did they make who made the Andrea Bargnani trade? CAA. Karl-Anthony Towns.
I like this version of CAA more than I do that version of CAA.
We all do, but
Mm-hmm.
you know, those ties run deep. That's all.
It's a fun correlation. I will again repeat. I think Karl-Anthony Towns is better than Andrea Bargnani. The player the Knicks got now is much better than the player they got then.
Can't spell creative artist agency without cat. Say Cooper miss. Lots. That got you?
Because yes, you can.
C-A-T, not K-A-T.
Oh, that. Yes. That version of the word cat, you can. You're correct, John. How could I ever doubt you? I apologize.
I don't know. I don't want to
18 left, by the way. 18 left.
Okay, we're good. Lots of emotions. I was spiraling for a minute. Cat works better, or Cat better have that dog in him, DAWG. Shout out to Leon and Co. They shot their shots. They did the thing. I pray it works. Yeah, I think this is where I'm at. Shooting the shot, going for it, whatever phrase you want to use. They're all in. I mean, now at this point, they're as all in as a team can get. The only difference between them and some of the other all-in teams of recent vintage, I kind of want to pull up. Hold on. Knicks stats basketball reference. I think this will be an accurate representation. So how old do you think the oldest rotation Nick is?
We're not saying campaign. You asked.
No, we're not saying campaign.
Okay. Cat's 28. Jalen Brunson's 28. Josh Hart's 30.
Josh Hart turned 29 in March. He is 29.
So he's 29.
The oldest.
So is Jalen Brunson
rotation.
27?
I don't know, but the answer is Josh Hart.
Okay.
So
Josh.
Every rotation player on this team is under the age of 30. That is something.
It was true for a while because Julius just turned 30.
Yeah, but last year the rotation wasn't all under 30.
Well, yeah, they traded for Bogey and Alec Burks, but yeah. But like that was a part of their staple before they made those trades was that they had a bunch of the youths, you know.
But say what you want about Towns, and God knows we're saying a lot about him tonight. He's not old. Like
no. This isn't any hesitations I have are less about his age or his ability. Like this isn't even like the Embiid or a Paul George trade that they made. This is like a guy in his prime. There's a really high offensive upside. I agree with many that have suggested. I hope that dog is in him in important situations.
I just got so upset that I'm not going to be able to listen to a Low Post podcast about this.
Oh, I'm sorry. This is a new world that we live in, by the way, where there's no Low Post to listen to this. This wasn't a Woj bomb that told me about it.
That's true.
Like, Fred, you messed up the timeline, the sacred timeline, by leaving the Knicks beat.
Yeah. I know a couple of people who I don't give a flying fuck what they have to say about it. They should remain nameless. Hush Zoo. I don't know how reliable this is, but Matt Issa reported, Devo was not happy and not into the Nova thing. I could totally believe this. He lost his starter spot after having the season he had.
So we've been on here, but we've been tagged in this tweet a few times from Matt Issa, who I guess we now have to read this. Matt Issa is a writer for Opta.
I know that name. I don't know who he is.
I've seen him around NBA Twitter a bunch. Like I don't want to dismiss him completely. I just don't know where this is coming from. But he says he also prefaces, "I am by no means the newsbreaker, but I am hearing that Dante DiVincenzo was actually unhappy in New York and was not as into the Nova Boys thing as he had been advertised." My only reaction to this, because obviously Matt's saying, like, I'm not an insider, so I'm not reporting this. He's just saying what he's heard. The observation I made about the Roommates live show is that Dante wasn't there, that they brought Mikal out for a special reunion. And there's
That's
just
interesting.
There's no mention of Dante DiVincenzo throughout that conversation.
Occam's razor. Simplest explanation is usually the correct one. Guy's going to go from putting up 20 points a game in a playoff series to playing under 20 minutes a game.
Yeah.
Maybe not ideal. Thanks, Hush. Greg, film stuff. Hate to see JR go, honestly. Wanted to see it through with him in this group. I think Cat is soft, but we just added one of the best bigs in the league who could hit threes and block shots, and Cat was one series away from the finals. Yes, but part of the reason they didn't make that finals is because he came up very small, and he was not good in that Mavs series. And that's like, talk about the Denver series, talk about some other decent playoff performances that he's had. You know, the Dallas series is what it is. Thanks, Greg. Canyon Pepper, what's going on, Canyon? Funny how all the Julius Randle haters are now acting like they didn't want him gone. With that said, gonna miss Devo. Miles minutes increasing. Yeah. No Nick in my lifetime. This I could say without question, or in my time watching the team, I should say, has had opinions change about him and fluctuate as heavily as Julius. I don't even know who's second.
Derrick Rose.
Yeah, but that was a down and then an up. And then it stayed up, and then it kind of went down, and then everybody stopped thinking about him. Like,
you said Nick, so it's different, but Tibbs qualifies for this, which is ironic that he and Julius were always attached at the hip, and the up and the down, the up and the down.
It came off coaches. That's coach. That's coach.
That's all coaches. That's actually a very fair response. Yes.
No, I don't think anybody, because like even Melo, it started good, it stayed good. Like nobody ever disliked Melo until they didn't, and then the consensus was like, let's get him out of here.
I don't think. I think it's different in that Melo.
It wasn't a role.
You either showed up and you liked Melo, and
or you didn't,
or he showed up and you hated Melo, and you were consistent throughout.
This
it
didn't
different. Fluctuate. Yeah.
Randle, everybody was down, then everybody was up, then everybody was down, then everybody went down some more, then everyone was back up, and then we all remember November of this past year, everyone was way down.
Oh my
God.
And
then everybody was up, and then even like, how about this? Since the man has played a basketball game, we went from, oh, this team looks a lot better without Julius Randle.
Yeah.
To, we can't trade Julius Randle. Julius Randle's our guy. How dare you even bring up such blasphemy? You know? Tell me another player that's going to happen to. Alex, Deuce is going to start and break Devo's record. Double or nothing, Alex.
Hell yeah.
You paid him you got him a beer that night, right? That I could.
He got a beer that night is what I know. Yeah.
Well, I owe you a couple beers, Alex. And maybe we'll make it one more if we make this bet, because I will bet against you right now. Hushzu, Deuce, Payne, Shamet, Mook. I like our bench, to be honest. Well, if that's our bench, I do not like our bench.
Where's Precious?
Yeah, because if Hart's starting, then Precious is coming off the bench. And as of now, Mitchell Robinson is still on this basketball team, which we'll see how long. That's man, the Mitch part of it. If he does not go out in this trade, what's more like?
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
I was gonna say, what's more likely? He comes back and plays #meaningful minutes for this team, or they use his salary to acquire fill in the blank here.
Salary. And it's not even so much that I doubt his ability or what the Knicks' plan is for him.
Yeah, I know.
It's
I
very
want to
much
disagree
a-
with you, but
It's very much I'm not confident in his ability to come back and stay healthy. You know, that's this point.
unless me and you and DJ are all very wrong and they plan on playing Cat almost not exclusively, but like a lot at the 4, then it would seem to make a hell of a lot more sense to either go with like Precious as the backup 5 or figure out a way to get Nick Richards if you're not getting Nick Richards in this trade, which they might be, and then flip Mitch for like, I mean, $14 million when you can't take more incoming than you have outgoing. Like, it doesn't give you a ton of options, but you could get something for that. Armand with another one. I think that Julius wanted the extension and was probably going to start being a problem. I'll get back to that in a second. I think Dante is happy that he's leaving because of the minutes. Not crazy. And again, we should note that, as has been reported, the Timberwolves are a team he almost went to last year in free agency. And 3, does this happen if iHeart stays? Well, we talked about that. I don't have a great answer. My gut is yes, it does happen. And he ends with "Let's go Knicks." Now, was Julius going to start being a problem? I can't get there.
I don't
I
think
can't
that's his DNA. Yeah, I can't get there either. We've seen guys come here. Like, Quickly wasn't a problem when he didn't get
He
extended.
was very professional.
Yeah, that was this is a business, and what the Knicks have done a good job with the players that they've acquired is hiring professionals, guys that work hard. And Julius, his reaction to not getting extended is like, all right, I'm about to have the walk year from hell. You know, like I'm about to go. Well, I guess from hell is probably the wrong. I'm going to go all out in my walk here and give them hell. And you'll have to see. We'll approach the free agency conversation in the offseason. But yeah, I'm not. The last thing I ever think about Julius Randle is that he'd become a problem in that. Well, which is ironic because this is the same guy who a lot of people claim 2 years ago was like the biggest problem in that organization. But culture's so much better now. So, yeah.
Thanks, Armin.
Significant one next.
John Shin. This is wildly generous. We have the season media day hasn't even happened yet. Just to thank you for hours of entertainment, schlepping my way to work. This trade is insane and is an insane win for the Knicks. Thank you, Julius DiVincenzo and Kemba. Why not? Why the hell not?
No. The
What?
Kemba's who they traded to get the Detroit pick.
Oh my god.
It's a great call, John. That's why you're saying Kemba.
What else was in that trade?
It was Kemba, Jalen Duren, and then
that's how Detroit got Jalen Duren. That's right.
Yeah, and then the Knicks got the Bucks pick. The Knicks got the Bucks pick.
No, they got the Bucks, the
Washington
Nuggets pick, which the Nuggets pick that same night they flipped to. Man, that night was a wild night.
So the Knicks traded Kemba, and it was a salary dump because they traded Kemba and Jalen Duren to Detroit for a future first, and this is that future first.
Okay.
Yeah. The highly protected that's like 1 through 9 in 2027.
John, I've said it before, I'll say it again. I am the luckiest man in the world that I don't have to sit and process this by myself in my room until 3 a.m, which is what I'd be doing if I wasn't doing this. So the fact that I have people here with me to help me process it is the greatest gift that anyone could get. And the fact that, you're showing this level of generosity, I never know what to say in these scenarios, as you well know by now, but I would just say thank you. It is immensely appreciated. As we try to do our jobs very well. Tanuj Parikh. What's going on, Tanuj? Appreciate all the great work and content from KFS. Thank you. Not KFC, KFS.
I could use some. I didn't have dinner. Well, no, we went. Oh, this has been such a long night.
You know what you were gonna say? You didn't have breakfast yet?
No, I just forgot. We went out to dinner. It was a date night tonight,
Oh.
and then we were like gonna, because then the Mets were giving me agita, so I was
Gotcha.
like, "You want to like go out to one of the dessert shops in
Very
Bayside?"
nice. Very nice.
And then the Knicks traded Julius Randle for Karl-Anthony Towns, and I've been here ever since. Where is my wife, by the way?
What? Where is what?
Where's my wife, by the way? I just got up and left. I have no idea. I'm
we
assuming she's on
ran
the couch right
home.
now.
We literally ran home from the movie theater, which was difficult for my wife because she did some kind of a class at the YMCA today, and her body is like just sore as all hell. And I probably should say this out loud. Sometimes we have one of my students babysit for us. She's a senior. She's like the most mature person in the world. She's amazing. Shout out to BHS volleyball. But like I literally came in and she was like in the room with both kids who were up when we walked in, which is a whole nother story. And I was like, "Hi, I gotta go," and I just ran downstairs. And I trusted Dolores to explain to her what was going on.
So for all you know, all 4 of them are upstairs right now
Having a party. I don't know.
watching the live stream. Hi,
Watching the
Dolores,
live stream. Yeah.
if you're still up. Yeah.
Danny Gardner. I have the trade comp. Mark Aguirre for Adrian Dantley. Well, before my time. I know who those players are, and I know their meaning in NBA history, obviously.
But that's a good call. That's a very good call.
So Dantley was an all NBA level player. Aguirre was an all-star.
So the reason why this makes sense to this was that, and like who knows? I actually don't know what the teammate that Aguirre came from, but that Pistons team had gotten to the finals the year before, and
well,
they
Aguirre
lost
came from Dallas.
From Dallas, right? So Adrian
He was
Dantley
an
went to
all-star
Dallas.
in Dallas. Yeah. He actually finished 14th in MVP. Oh, he got MVP votes his last full season in Dallas.
So midway through the season after Detroit goes to the finals, there's dissension between, is this Isaiah Thomas's team or is this Adrian Dantley's team?
Yep.
And so they went to Isaiah and said, "What do you want to do?" And the legend is that he was like, "You got to trade Adrian Dantley," and they traded him for Mark Aguirre, and then they rode the success of the new team chemistry to 59 wins and a title that season. So
yeah, I mean Dantley never made an all-star team in Detroit, but he was a 6-time all-star. Dantley had a case for being one of the top 75 players who ever lived.
The 30 for 30 on the Bad Boys, where you hear from both Dantley and Aguirre and Isaiah, for that matter, about that season and the eventual trade, is very eye-opening as to like what Dantley was to that team, how like important he was to opening them up offensively, and then trading him for Aguirre, who just then unlocked the defensive angle for them that they eventually used on their way to a title, especially when it would come in handy that year facing Michael Jordan in the conference finals.
Yeah, well, we'll see if it works out that well. Mark's good comp, Danny. Mark Sable, what's going on, Mark? Does this trade happen if iHeart stays? Everybody's asking this question now. Is the team better with Cat than with iHeart and Randle? That's a tough question.
It's a great question. Do they still? So here's the problem. It's not just with iHeart and Randle. Is Mikal Bridges still getting traded here? So I'd rather have iHeart, Randle, and Mikal Bridges and OG Anunoby.
Man, I don't know. I'm getting really high on the fumes of the ceiling of this team.
I can't wait to see it. Opening night, less than 3 weeks away.
I think the trade does still happen, and man, even with iHeart and Randle, I don't know that they could have accessed the ceiling that I think this team can access now.
3.5 weeks away, to be exact.
It's a great question, Mark. I don't have a great answer. Kevin, with another one. Small victory lap. Kevin, you don't know how to take small victory laps. For calling for this earlier this summer without Dante. Actually wonder who is ninth man after Deuce, Precious, and Payne. Morris or Sims? 2 question marks. I'm not sure Payne's going to be in there. I mean, the Bagley report from earlier this summer, which seemed to very, very flatly just say like Kolek is ahead of Payne as of now. Like, we'll see. But even if you put Payne or Kolek in there, man. Shit, you ask me right now, I bet you I can't believe I'm saying this. I bet you Marcus Morris gets some minutes for this team. Not nuts.
Well, I guess we'll find out.
We shall. Okay,
Caitlin.
finishing up here soon. Yushen Zhu, what's going on, Yushen? Remember how we tanked for the first pick in 2015 and ended up with Porzingis? I bet, or I was there when Kat first visited and matched up with KP. Look at where we are now. Hope they meet up in the Eastern Conference Finals next year. That would be a cool and interesting thing, for sure. Definitely. NFL highlights. What's up, John? It's Chris. Can't believe this happened after we talked about it today. I hadn't checked my messages since we had an initial conversation in the Substack DMs or Substack chat. But yes, you absolutely brought this up, and I am shocked. I should have taken the hint. You clearly knew something. I really like Ant, Dante, McDaniels, Nas, Gobert going forward. It's a spicy team. It's a spicy team. It's a good team. That team can win the title. Absolutely. Luis Maldonado. The real question is what Clyde Frazier thinks about this trade and what his phrases are going to be for Cat. Has to be something with the Cat's pajamas.
I like
Has
that.
to be something with the Cat's pajamas. If it's not, I'll be very disappointed.
We find out soon.
Hush Zoo, if iHeart messed it up, well, thank you, iHeart. Let's go Knicks.
Someone's very high on this, Hush Sue. I'm happy to hear it.
He's the MVP tonight. Sheldon Blackman, what's going on, Sheldon? I think Robinson's constant injuries and his uncertainty to start the season forced their hand. Not a big fan of Cat, but they had to make the trade. Again, I'm going to lean on the reporting, which indicates A, they've known about the Robinson injury for a while, and B, okay, so actually, maybe I'm agreeing with you. If they've known about the Robinson injury for a while, and the reporting also states they've been trying to get Cat for a while, then really, what did this come down to? This came down to relenting on DiVincenzo, and I wonder if this wasn't a game of chicken. And talk about, here's a name I didn't expect to fucking say tonight, Donovan Mitchell. The last time they played a game of chicken, they lost. Well, they may have won, but they
didn't get the guy they wanted.
They did not end up with the player that they were going after for the better part of 2 months. I wonder how that experience influenced their process now, because clearly they got to 2 days before media day and were like, I guess it's on us to do this or not. And they included DiVincenzo is what I'm guessing happened. Leaning on the reporting. I'm not, I don't know anything. Trayvon Cash, what's going on, Trayvon?
Last one, by the way.
Oh, okay. The Knicks just traded for the third best scoring big in the NBA and sent a role player and a very good player coming off major surgery. We good. I want to give DiVincenzo more love than that. Is he a role player? Yeah, he's a role player. He's, again, we've been at this for 3 hours and 34 minutes, my clock says. I could do 15 minutes right now if I could see straight still. On like what is the true value of Dante DiVincenzo in the NBA today, given his size, given the fact that like he is on the smallish side. I wrote a column towards, I think maybe in the summer, towards the end of last year, one or the other, where I said I thought he was the most valuable contract in the NBA below the mid-level exception. And I think there's a good argument for that. Is he the sort of player that is like untouchable because of his shooting? I think reasonable minds could differ on that. I know there's some folks here at KFS who probably think that he is, or he was. And as for Julius, it's, we know what, say this for Julius. We kind of have an idea of what he is. Straight comes down to Cat. Straight comes down to Cat and what he is and what he could be. And we'll see that play out on the court. Well, thank you everybody for watching. Is anybody still watching?
8,200 people.
What?
8,229. Now that's split up between YouTube and Twitter. So 1,581 is still watched on YouTube. The rest is all scrolling past the old x.com. But yeah, we've still got a crowd. And
thank you, everybody.
Sound surprised when we get to these marathon live streams that people want to watch us, but we appreciate all you watching.
We do appreciate it. I am going to go attempt to type words, I think they're called, on my laptop, which I'm looking at right now. And we'll see if I get that done before 5. And then I think I'm driving out to Long Island at like 8 a.m. tomorrow morning. So wish me luck. Andrew, good luck turning this into good old...
I'll get multiple parts and multiple uploads and then start planning out Minnesota content over the next couple days. And I also have a trip planned to Long Island for a baby's birthday party on Saturday. So I guess if I drive past you, I'll say hi.
We've talked about this for over 3.5 hours. I still haven't remotely wrapped my mind around it.
Same. The suddenness of it, it's so much more than just like this had the same feeling as not different impact, obviously, but the OG for RJ and Quickly because of the constant that RJ and Quickly were in our lives. That's now being shaken up. The constant that Julius Randle's been and DiVincenzo became. And I got to be honest, like Anunoby was always on the radar because of the CAA and just like how much of a perfect fit as a complementary player he would be. Towns was always like the fun name that everybody threw in the trade.
Me and you differ there because
obviously he came up this summer.
No, but more than that. Again, first rule of following the Knicks: always read between the lines on Ian Begley. And there's a reason that in every column Ian Begley literally has ever written relating to a trade or the Knicks search for a star or the Knicks search for a center, he always tucks in there, I will not rule out Karl-Anthony Towns.
And a lot of that was because what the report was that if they ever wanted him,
this
they could have
years
him.
Though.
Right, for years. And I'm saying after a while, you're like, all right, I guess they don't want him. If for years they could have him, or Minnesota doesn't want to part with him. The fact that 3 days before media day, this happens.
I don't know.
Stunner. It's a shocker.
I think maybe last summer when we heard that, like, if the Knicks wanted Karl-Anthony Towns to be a Knick right now, he'd be a Knick. I think in retrospect, that was more about whatever price that Minnesota wanted at that time, as opposed to the Knicks being just not wanting him as a player. And at this point, given the circumstances and how those circumstances have continued to adjust over that time, that price point was now amenable. And here we are.
Yeah.
Thanks everybody for watching. We will be back with more content of some kind very soon. Until then, again, feel free to please do us a favor, take an extra couple of seconds, give the podcast you're listening to, if you are indeed listening to this in podcast form, a 5-star review or a 5-star rating. Give it a nice review and subscribe to the YouTube channel so you can see more of what we do. We'll be back with more fun and games before you know it. Peace out.